aware, you should see the message just come up at the top of the screen. So Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Deborah. Well, it's really good. I'm really made up by the amount of people that have come to see this session today, and it's really good to have colleagues from really all over the country, from all sorts of different institutions. So welcome to everybody from our institute and from all the other institutes that are watching today. So my aim really today is to just to sort of give people an introduction to what outreach is, how outreach is combined with public engagement, and really give people some context into how they can get involved in things like that by way of being a researcher. And actually what I want this to do is be a little bit collaborative, so there's something for everyone to do at the end, and well, not at the end, sort of in the middle. And I've got about an hour and a half, and I didn't know whether I would use it all up, but I think I probably will. And but so we need to be able to do something sort of about halfway through. So if you've got access to a mobile device, perhaps, but you can also use your use tablet devices. You might be able to use your laptop and so on. But I'm going to show you how to log into something that we use called Socrative, and that allows me to get some feedback from everyone that's out there watching. So we're going to do that. So I am I'm like in the depths of Staffordshire. So let's have a go at a screen share for my slides, because I have got some slides to run through. And so let's see how we go. But again, welcome to everybody who's watching today. So let's give it a whirl. This is, we don't want that, we want that. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen now, and you should be able to see my my PowerPoint slides, and I've lost my face now, so I don't know how I look on the camera, but I hope everybody can see my slides. And what I'll do is I'll drop out of this, and if we can save the questions in the chat towards the end, or when I come out of this and we're doing our sort of feedback using Socrative for a question I'm going to propose, then I would be grateful. So as Deborah said, my name is Martin Kashara. I'm an associate professor for engagement in STEM, and I'm the lead public engagement practitioner in something we have at the University of Wolverhampton. And there are a couple of people who are on the event today who are either members of the existing team or were members of our STEM response team. And what we are a internationally recognised public engagement and outreach team from the University of Wolverhampton. And our job is to go into the community and talk about science, technology, engineering and maths, particularly in areas of multiple deprivation. And so I'm gonna talk a little bit about them right at the end. Now then, let's see. Okay, so one thing I would want to state right at the front of this talk, I was the first person in my family to go to university, so I believe in the transformative power of higher education. Everybody who's watching now, I believe, is very privileged to have access to higher education, because it changes people's lives, and that's my mission as an outreach practitioner, is to try and show people that my subject area and others within the STEM subject areas are absolutely fantastic. You know, it generates social capital, it generates cultural capital, but importantly for me, it generates science capital too. And I believe that can change a person's life. So I really do believe that it can change a person, and I like to try and sort of get that out as much as I can. So really my job is to talk about science, I suppose. So I am a scientist. So by way of talking about my area of expertise, I am a former defence scientist with an expertise in, well, roughly biological weaponry, really. But I am a medical microbiologist and a molecular bacteriologist by trade, really. So that is one of my hats as a medical microbiologist. So I teach biomedical science, and I teach my students at all levels about infection. So I'm also a researcher. I was a white-coated researcher, but now I'm a pedagogist, so I do teaching and learning research. And my main area of inquiry really is how engagement works, not just engagement for the public, but also student engagement, but also staff engagement as well. And indeed, one of the functions of my team is also to provide staff CPD, not just for our staff, but for staff outside the university and even teachers that are in high schools and places like that. So I am a public engagement specialist, and I really, really, really believe in talking. You know, it's my job. You know, I'm an academic and a lecturer, and you know, but to engage the public in your subject area is vital to what we do. You know, communication doesn't stop in your subject and in your subject area. It's very, very important. And I developed an expertise in public engagement and the ways of doing it since about 2011, when I did my very first science show in the middle of Wolverhampton town centre, actually, with some of my colleagues. And since then, we've come on leaps and bounds, and now we have a team, as I said, the STEM response team, that go out and engage, hopefully one day, the world. Okay, so I am a science performer. So one of the things I'm a theatre practitioner on top of all the other things that I do, and performance in science, I believe, is a very powerful thing. So if you've been to theatre, or you've been to a pantomime and you've laughed and you've cried along with the performers, then you will remember that. You know, it's an incredibly engaging experience, and I believe in the power of this particular kind of delivery of public engagement. So I am a science presenter, okay, sometimes radio broadcaster occasionally, but I'm also a writer and a stand-up comedian. So I have a variety of different things that I do, both inside university and outside university. So one of the things I do, I use public engagement to change people's minds. Now, being a scientist, I use something called science communication to do that. And as Deborah alluded to at the beginning, that's one of the things that I'm regarded for. And actually, I use the techniques of a communicator, of a storyteller sometimes, to help change people's minds, because the experiences that we are crafting, be that in an educational context or be that in a public engagement context where we might be talking to communities, is key. And what we need to do is be able to change a person's perspective, change their perceptions, change their minds about things. You know, incite discussion, however we do it, be controversial. You know, however we do it, we need to incite a change in a person, and that's what this is all about. And I'm going to give you a few tips at the end of how you can better do that. So it's always nice to start something with a definition, and the National Coordinating Council of Public Engagement actually define public engagement as this, and that is the myriad of ways which activity benefits the benefits of higher education and research can be shared to the public. But it's important that actually we see public engagement sometimes as a one-way thing. So I hopefully going to get some feedback from you and some questions from you in a bit. But the thing is that actually, you know, this is I'm talking to a camera in a room full of lights. And so it feels a little bit one way. I can hear your voices later. I'm hopefully going to get some questions on the chat. But I am delivering. You know, public engagement needs to be a two-way thing. We need to be able to learn from each other. And the way I do it particularly is using science communication. And science communication is something that's been on the sort of on the up and the up and the up. Before the lockdown, it was a really, really booming industry for lots of people. But now people who go into schools and do schools outreach are having to think of different ways to engage this sort of almost lost population of young learners. And still, I think there's a place for science communication in actually generating interest in different subject areas. So, so just going back to this taking it out. So I've talked about what public engagement is, and actually talking about your subject area and actually engaging with the public can do lots of things. I mean, when I say public, I mean publics. So if we sort of define that, so different groups by which that you communicate your content to. So that might be groups from the media, it might be groups from industry, it might be people in your community that live where you are. It could be somebody you might meet down the pub when they open again, perhaps, if you like to go to pubs and places like that. But nevertheless, things like public engagement can do lots of things. It can certainly give support to a cause. It influences, just like we've seen now, we've had so much public engagement about what coronavirus is, what the disease is. Admittedly, at first, information was a little bit scanty, but we've accepted what we've been told. And that is because of the engagement with the publics that the government has made. They've used public engagement to change our minds, right? For us to accept the way things are, right? They've used the techniques that I'm going to talk about really to help us understand And you can see that in the media all the time. So we can influence people, politics, funding streams, which of course is important to research. We might be able to create understanding and in a long time ago, public engagement was seen as a way of plugging a bit of an educational gap, if you like. And actually, we don't use that kind of deficit model. It was something that came out of the 90s, and we've forgotten about that now because people are very well informed. But what we do is use public engagement to dispel misconceptions. You know, we not just change people's minds. We're sort of, you know, we might be correcting perceptions, if you like. I've talked about changing public perceptions. Really, that's the role of it. And but importantly, public engagement and engagement in public engagement provides tacit skills. So the researchers, or all of my undergraduate researchers for my final year projects, are all engaged in public engagement activity, either face-to-face activity, online activity. They make theatre shows and so on. And they start by having the graduate attributes that you might expect a level 6 student to have. But by the time they come out, they have better practitioner identity, they believe in themselves, they have confidence, you know, and they have all these sorts of tacit skills, you know, the actual skills somebody needs, adaptability, resilience, and all of those sort of things that we often can't give in an undergraduate programme. And indeed, it is an incredibly transformative experience to stand in front of a group of people who you, in their eyes, are the expert in your subject. It gives you a link to your content. It makes you believe in who you are as a practitioner. Now, because I'm creating scientists that work in the NHS, it's very important. So to be able to have people engaged in communicating their subject area through public engagement, science communication, is actually vital to my students' learning experience. So this is really the why people should be involved in public engagement and outreach, because actually it will give you the skills, the confidence and the way of being that you just cannot learn normally, you know. So, but we'll come back to that a little bit later on, I believe. So let's put things into context. We're out there, we're all researchers to a certain extent, and in previous years, and then we can talk about the REF now, the Research Excellence Framework. Public engagement does matter because it's a way for us to get to impact. In previous years, in the 2014 REF, it was a way of really, it was your impact, but it isn't now. All right, it can be a way for you to get to your impact, to be part of your impact case study, but indeed it isn't just that. And you could submit just like evidence to say, oh yeah, I was in the paper twice, and I'm being flippant, but actually that seemed to be enough, but it isn't now. But impact is defined as an effect or change or benefit on the economy, society, culture, public policy, and so on. But it's got to be beyond academia. And the only way we can get to the beyond is to communicate that beyond the walls of our institutions. And we can't do that without getting out there. You know, surely that's absolutely impossible. And actually it's become more and more and more important because now it's 25% of the score of REF. So the impact case studies and the public engagement that can feed into that, and the outreach that we can do to do the public engagement we need to do, is becoming more and more vitally important, particularly to universities. And it's going to get more and more important as we move forward into the new normal, I promise. Okay, so just for those of you who don't know what REF looks like, there it is, right? And you can see that we've got a mixture of research outputs, impact case studies, and your specific statements from your unit of assessment that all start to build up the bits that are assessed in REF there. So if we're doing outreach and public engagement, can it really affect some of these things? So if you're out there and you're an institution and you think, well, I don't like talking to people, right, then actually can what I'm saying actually help? Can it generate impact? Can it change the metrics, not just for the Research Excellence Framework, but for other things too? And actually, yes, it can. And so of course, we've got the public engagement part of REF to help us generate impact through outreach. And we've also got the teaching excellence framework. All right, so of course this is what university teaching quality is sort of measured on, if you like, and it is vitally important for people to be able to choose institutions these days. And indeed, if we can involve students in outreach as part of their course, as part of their studies, all right, it gives them a greater sense of belonging, and it makes them, you know, have better relationships with their lecturers and so on. And actually, if you look at some of the metrics in the teaching excellence framework, you'll see that these things are vitally important to the student experience. And so it can change those things, certainly. Now universities are measured on something, or they're certainly moving forward, we will be more measured on something called the knowledge exchange framework, or KEF. And there are 7 areas of KEF that universities are going to be measured on, and a lot of them to do with interaction with the business and the public and things like that. But you'll see right at the very bottom is public and community engagement. Now, we cannot do that without the ability to do outreach. So if a university isn't engaging, or a team isn't engaging, or a research school or an institute isn't engaging, then we cannot do this public and community engagement part for your faculty. You know, there is no way of doing it. We can, you know, we need to be measured on all of these metrics. And actually, I think that last one is vitally important, of course, because that's what I do for my job. There we go. It goes big. So really, you know, maybe some of you are out there thinking, well, why bother? You know, why bother doing outreach in the first place? And actually, it's for a variety of reasons, right? Because what you're doing is you're helping to change somebody's life, really, by doing what you're doing. You're taking learning out of the classroom. You know, I work, or at least I did before I had to stay in my house for weeks. I worked with children, young learners at all levels, literally from nursery all the way up to A level, and of course my own students at the University of Wolverhampton every day. And actually, to take learning out of the classroom and give it more sort of life context is vital, and outreach can do that. It allows you to develop a more innovative curriculum. Not only does it allow an academic or a researcher to think about their information in a slightly different way, it allows you to sort of use creative interventions to be able to put across your subject matter, but also to be able to generate things that can lead to impact. Of course, it offers a multi-sensory experience, and the more senses you can stimulate, particularly some of the psychological ones, if you like emotions, then you will win. You are making people remember, you are changing people's lives. And I'll come back to that in a bit. Of course, it contextualises practice, you know, particularly for those who are working in healthcare settings and so on. But it also enhances the capitals, the social, the cultural and the science capital, which is increasingly important as we see the attainment gap in different communities growing, especially now when we've been in lockdown. This is a very, very, I think, quite a pertinent issue here, in that gap is growing as different communities are being left behind in some ways by the institutes that are supposed to help them learn. And so I think outreach, for this reason, for plugging that gap, is going to be increasingly important as we move out of lockdown. But whatever happens, it supports this increasingly complex learning in people, and that is very important, because if we're trying to help people understand what we do as researchers, then what we need to do is we need to stimulate that deeper learning. You know, we don't want people just go and brush off what we're talking. We want people to remember. We want to change people, like I said before. So really, what you're doing is, right, by dealing in the world of outreach, if you like, you're not a teacher, you're not in formal education. All right, what you're doing is you're in this second sort of zone, if you like, all right, in the informal learning zone. You're being really like an explainer in a museum. You know, you're being somebody that might work at somewhere like the think tank or the Life Centre in Newcastle. You are, yeah, or Winchester Science Centre or somewhere like that, where you're actually engaging somebody in subject matter, but often through a sort of experiential thing. It might be through creativity. It's always through some sort of active learning process. Okay, that is outside the classroom, and that informal zone is very powerful. And I don't know about you, right? People, I think that people learn through play. You can watch a child discover and learn how a machine works. And we're the same. We might be a bit more grown up than a 3-year-old, but actually what we are doing is we're still learning through play, and that is where this informal zone is. And often when you're doing outreach, that's exactly what you're doing. You're engendering sort of discovery and play.
Hello, could I just ask everybody to turn their mics off, please?
I'll crack on. I'll turn that down. Okay, so of course there is going to be some of this like learning by happenstance involved in there as well, but really we're in this informal zone. So what I want to do is just, and I'm streets ahead here, so what I want to do is just put out this question. What are the barriers to engaging in outreach or public engagement in your subject area? Now, what actually are the barriers? And there's been quite a lot of research done particularly by people like the Wellcome Trust into just this, but I'd like to get your opinions out there in the world of the digital world at the moment that I'm watching, or rather you're watching me. Now then, there's a particular way that we're going to do that. So all I want you to do, right, and you won't be able to click on this link, but you'll be able to put it in to your device. And all you need to do is Google something called Socrative Student. You might have used this before, and this is a fantastic tool. I use this all the time. So if you Google Socrative Student, click on the link, right, and you go into that, and actually there's a button that says log on, right, as a student. You don't need to actually log on. You don't need to register, don't need to do anything. It's not going to take any third-party information. It doesn't share any information with anybody. You don't have to put your name in. You can just put anything. It's completely anonymous. I'm not even going to show you names. Once you're on there, what I'd like you to do is type in this sort of phrase here, if you like. It is THU21FRV. That is my teaching room number, and that will allow you access to a quiz. Now, I haven't started the quiz yet, but what it's going to do is give you a sort of holding page. Now, suspiciously, and there's no conspiracy theory involved here, folks, right? It looks a little bit like a coronavirus, all right? But I promise it isn't Socrates' fault, okay? So what I'll do is I'm going to have to stop my screen share and jump into another screen, and I'll do that now. It is very hot under these lights. You might say I'm getting shinier and shinier and shinier here. Okay, so I'm just going to stop the screen share there. And if I can. And where are we? There we go. Can I do that? Stop sharing. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to ditch out of the screen share there, and I'm going to share another screen straight away. And that is going to be my screen for my Socrative, and hopefully you can see that there. And so I've got this is what if you don't use Socrative, why not? Because it's fab. And so I've got a quiz there, and we've got 40 people waiting already, and I love that. So what I'm going to do, I am going to just start a quiz. So I've put something in already. So this is going to be our quiz for today. And it is just a one answer thing. You don't have to answer any questions. I just want your opinions. And I'll click next. Now then, if you're going to do this, if you want to incite discussion and use Socrative, I recommend using Teacher Paste here. And so we're going to click that setting. And I'm going to switch off the ability to require names. And I'm just going to click start. And what happens is you'll see a question, right? And what you'll see is it's a bit like a tweet wall. I'll get your answers, right? So please be kind, no swear words, right? So here we go. Lush. So we're going to get some answers here, and I can use these as part of discussion today. And it's a nice way for me to engage with you synchronously while we chat. Okay, so remember, this is what are your barriers that stops you engaging in outreach and public engagement as a researcher. Okay, and we'll look at some of these, and of course people will have similar opinions, so we can group some of those together, and we can have, and I can sort of respond to some of those. And so let's have a quick look. I'll let a few of those come in. Alrighty. So again, I don't know what people's subject areas are out there, and of course we're going to have a variety of different people. But let's have a look. So we've got 37, about 47 people that are on there, and there are some fantastic comments. So, okay, Geoff, I'm researching Emirati women in the UAE. So actually, yeah, there are some social, cultural and ethical considerations in engaging in outreach, you know, but actually if it's a transformative thing for a community, then maybe people want to know about it, particularly in your local community. One of the things that's just come up here is time, right? One of the comments, there's a lot about time, and a lot about the fact that people have got a lot to do. And actually, you know, yes, I am right on board with you. And one of the greatest barriers that we've seen, particularly in the research that's been carried out, is time. Now, people don't feel like they have the time. And anybody who does engage in outreach, you will know that actually what you need to do is make the time. So my team works sometimes 7 days a week. And the reason for that is that, of course, the kind of community engagement that you need happens at the weekends or in the evenings. And actually, if you're needing to create impact, if you are needing to do outreach, then that should be built into part of what you're doing. And indeed, a lot of academics do have outreach hours built in to the hours that they're given. So, and so we've got some other comments. Again, some social cultural things like the fact that we live in a patriarchal system, and yes, you know, fair comment. But there is a massive onus now for all sexualities to get involved and all sexes to get involved in outreach, particularly in science. And so let's have a look. So there are some problems of language and stuff like that. But actually, that shouldn't necessarily be a barrier. Funding is a big one. So money, all right. Money is a big issue. You know, actually, if we haven't got the money to buy the things to do the stuff, then how can we do it? And you will find that actually the majority of people that are engaged in outreach, particularly those people who do it as an actual job. So there are freelance people that do this sort of stuff. The majority of their equipment comes from places like B&M or Home and Bargains, and you know, so funding maybe, you know, you can do a lot. What I'm trying to say, you can do a lot with a very, very small amount of money. The one thing here is confidence and knowledge and training. That's another thing that people often say, and that is again another, you know, all these comments are incredibly valid, and you can see them there on the screen. And actually, the idea that you haven't had the training, right, which then gives you the confidence to be able to do the outreach, is a big deal. And often there's not a lot of ways to actually engage in that training. You know, there are certainly in the sciences. So if you go onto an organisation called STEM Learning, they are the people that give the STEM ambassadors their accreditations and things like that. So you can go into schools and so on. A lot of your learning societies will have resources for you to use in outreach, so you don't have to dream up your own things. So that's one thing taken off the training. The imagination part's taken away, right? And then you can concentrate on actually the delivery, the communication. But actually, you're the expert, right? And the confidence comes from doing it. So it's just a case of having a go. And again, confidence, lack of time, security and confidentiality, you know, and outreach necessarily doesn't have to be a big explosion of your scientific content. It doesn't, or your subject area's content as a researcher. You know, it doesn't have to be about exactly what you're doing. You know, some people work in very sensitive areas, but you know, just by getting somebody enthusiastic about your general subject area is enough. You know, but if of course we generate an impact for a particular project, then we need to be able to talk about the whys and wherefores of what you're doing. So then, there's one here, seen as not qualified enough, possibly due to age. Right, so that's a double-edged sword there, and everybody can do this, right? So I have a 9-year-old and a 10-year-old child, and those two boys, they do as much outreach as I do. All right, so you can be any age to do this. One thing people sometimes think is that they are overqualified. So I do hear from quite senior people that actually maybe outreach isn't for them, you know, because they're too important. And I believe that is rubbish. Everybody should be engaged in promoting their subject area. It's what we do. Okay, so thank you for that. There's some really good comments there. And there's the first comment perhaps there, or the last comment on that list you can see on the screen, is distrust in scientists in general. I think there is, and certainly there was, and I don't know whether the pandemic that we're in now has certainly not helped, but there is a general distrust of, it's not just scientists, it's all STEM subjects to a certain extent, and it varies depending on where you are in the country, and it varies, unfortunately, depending on the sort of social economic status of the places where you are. All right, and again, that's a discussion for a different time. But this idea of distrust is something, again, that comes from I guess this sort of social confidence in subject areas, and how we change that, I'm not sure. But one of the things we can do is by engaging people in outreach and public engagement to change their opinions, hopefully. Okay, so thank you again for that. That's very good. Some very good points there. And if anybody's got any questions at the end, I can quite happily pick up on some of these. So I'm going to stop that share again, and I will go back through my open again, and let's go back to my slides. Okay, so again, thank you very much for engaging in that. Very useful tool, Socrative. And so if you are doing some public engagement work, and you are, which is really good, especially for sort of subject areas that don't sit in STEM often, that sort of public forum where you can incite discussion. This is a really nice way of getting some feedback, you know, other than using things like Mentimeter and Turning Point and all that sort of stuff, if you've ever used them before. Now then, I'm going to put the cat amongst the pigeons now and say, are these barriers real or relevant? And yes, they are to you. They are real and relevant to you. But unfortunately, like eating and breathing, outreach is something that is absolutely important. And it's got to be done. And different institutes deal with it in different ways. Of course, it's not just for creating impact. It's not just for creating sort of, you know, personal change in a person. Sometimes it's for marketing and recruitment in institutions. So this sort of thing has absolutely got to be done. And it's your institution's job to try and empower you, right, by exposing you, hopefully, to people like myself. Okay. So I believe that those barriers are real and relevant, of course, but I would work every hour God sends to do outreach, because it's what I do. I love it. So maybe it's not for everyone. Okay, now then, one thing I will do is just say this now, and again, not everybody will agree. This is just like my opinions, just like on Twitter, are my own. right? And so I believe as a researcher and as a communicator, as somebody who is in higher education or somebody who works in higher education across the country, that you have a responsibility to be able to communicate, to be able to, you know, sort of create a talk around your subject area, to be able to promote the activities of your institute, because by the very nature of you being in higher education, you are privileged. You've got to remember that in places like the Black Country area, the West Midlands, where the University of Wolverhampton is, right, actually the only about 20, just over 20% of people go to university, where the national average is twice that. You know, some places, particularly Sandwell and Dudley, which is just down the road from where Wolverhampton is, it's the sixth most deprived area in the whole country. People don't go to university there. You know, people can't see the value of it sometimes, and of course that's my job to try and change that. But by being in higher education, you are privileged, and I think people should be, you know, not proud of that privilege. That's the wrong word, but I think people should have that responsibility to think, well, actually, this is doing me some good. I'm gonna talk about it. I'm not telling you to go out there preaching on a soapbox, but we need to think that not only do we live in the first world, we're also in higher education, and that makes you a privileged person. And I think that's something that we should all think about every day, because it gives you a little bit of, you know, it brings you down a little bit. It brings you down a peg. You know, it makes you eat humble pie, if you like, in that, you know, you are a privileged person. Okay, so and Yoda had to come in here somewhere, and that's just the kind of person I am, of course. And by being a scientist, my nature is being a geek. And so Yoda would.
Hi, Martin. We lost
Hello,
you for
sorry,
a moment.
I'm here now. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So we've got a storm here, and so I've just heard some thunder. So I think it's just, that's why I've just been kicked out of Teams. So hopefully we can carry on where we left off. So
Sam's just very helpfully said that the last thing that he heard was Yoda would say.
Okay, right, nice. Thanks for that. Here we go. Let's try that again, everyone. So I can see that I'm sharing again now, and I'm just going to scroll back through. I'm just going to come out of that and go back to Yoda. So do bear with everyone. There we go. Okay, so sorry about that, the technical glitch here. And as I said, I am in the wilds of Staffordshire, and I do believe that some lightning has just struck something down the road. And so not only have we been flooded in the last 24 hours, I've got some connectivity problems, so I apologise. So this is what Yoda would say. So outreach you want to do you? Is I suppose what he would say in my very bad Yoda impression. Please do your own. I want to try and give you some top tips here, right, of how you can get involved in outreach. Now, the specific way you engage in your subject area, right, is dependent on your subject area, right. So, like for science, for the STEM subject, it's quite easy because we can often do interactive things. You know, we can do activities that exemplify our technique. It's the same in medicine, healthcare science, you name it, all those sorts of subject areas. For the humanities, okay, maybe it's more difficult, but you can get lots of good advice from the sorts of societies that you could be a member of. Okay, so Outreach then means these things. It means objects and things, right? And activities of doing a thing are the things of outreach, all right? You can't just turn up, trust me, right? This is not outreach, right? How dare you turn up at a place with just a laptop, right? And a memory stick, right? That isn't outreach. That isn't good enough, right? You need to do a thing, right? And again, this is me being opinionated here, right? You need to really do a thing. But what you need to do is you need to really think first. You need to think about what the important parts of what you do are, right? You need to boil down, you need to put all that subject area, all that research, all that lab work, all of those things that you're thinking about, put them in a big pot. And then what you need to do is boil that down into the component parts, split it up. What's important? What isn't important? You know, you don't need the preamble. The public doesn't want the preamble, right? What they want is something special. They want to be made to feel special by what you are doing, and that's how you create change in a person. You need to boil the essence down. Think about it like putting loads of flowers in a vat and boiling out an essential oil. It's a component part of a whole, but it helps you understand what the bigger thing is, right? And actually, that's really what outreach is. It's got to be absolutely engaging, right? You've got to put engaging people in front of people who need to be engaged, you know. And actually, I'm gonna come on to how you can be more engaging in a bit. The sort of things that we do, things like workshops, interactive sort of tabletop activities, little experiments people can do in a couple of minutes. Performances, certainly. We do a lot of work in theatre. We do loads of community events where we can engage the public in what we do. But importantly, there's things like festivals, not just science festivals, literary festivals, arts festivals, and so on. You know, and there are a variety of different ways to get to the public. You know, and if you can get there in an informal context, particularly at things like, you know, like a proper festival like the Green Man Festival or Glastonbury or something like that, and engage the public in that very informal context in your subject area, that is absolutely fantastic, because people are keenly interested, I promise, in what everybody does. You know, it's got to be, let me just, I've got to move my bits out of the way. Let's move that out of the way. If you are creating an activity, it's very important it's not too long. Right, we've got like an hour and a half, about 3/4 an hour left. I'm going to come up a little bit short for questions, but actually it's got to be engaging. It's got to fit into a session. So the STEM response team, when they make a session, they design it on a premise that it's got to last 50 minutes. That's because a school class lasts 50 minutes with 10 minutes changeover time. So actually, any event that you make, especially if it's that kind of engagement, got to fit in a particular time period. And actually, that's something I didn't learn very quickly, and was always being caught up short. So it is very important that you think about the length of what you're doing. All right, it's got to be dead quick, no more than 2 minutes. If it's a hands-on thing, somebody's just passing at a festival, and you know, or a meeting or a conference or something like that, you want to engage them immediately. Just by having something static, right? You know, just a few post-it notes and maybe a poster, right, isn't enough. If you're doing a poster competition, right, and at a conference, it's always the person with the paraphernalia that wins the prize. Trust me, because that's why I win poster prizes at conferences. It's because I have an engaging thing to do with the people that look at my posters. I don't just stand there in a static way. I use outreach techniques to be able to engage judges and win money sometimes. And but the important thing is, for any activity that you do, it has to have a payoff, right? It's a bit like a punchline in a joke, right? Somebody has got to win a thing, has got to do a thing. You know, if you're doing a workshop to talk about your research or your subject area, or you're going to say, one of the things I've done in the past is take our cancer researchers from the University of Wolverhampton, and we've taken them to the New Scientist Live Festival for 4 days at the Excel Arena in London, to be able to engage the public in their research in an informal context, through activity and through discussion. All right, and actually it is fantastic to be able to use that kind of engagement in that kind of arena. Is fab. But anything that you do is going to be quite quick, right? But the important thing is it's got to make the participant feel good afterwards. We always say in STEM outreach, particularly if we're getting somebody, say, in a theatre show and we get them on stage, they've got to leave the stage feeling like a hero, right? You can never put anybody down, all right? They've got to go off that stage feeling like $1 million. And I believe that's the same in every subject area. If you are talking to the public, then actually, if you're using outreach and you're using an activity-based sort of premise, then what you need to do is make them feel absolutely fantastic afterwards. Now then, let's go. Look. So this is what you absolutely need to do, and this needs to be built in just like evaluation at the beginning of your project, I believe. And you've got to think about a way. You've got to think about a way to get into impact as part of that project. You know, it's as important for a researcher as anything else. But what you've got to do is generate change in participants. And what you do is you need to put them in, I call it a transitional space, right? You know that feeling when you go, oh, and you're thinking straight away, that wonder's kicking in. This is that transitional space between knowing and not knowing. And actually, people really love that. You know, for somebody to give you like the maddest fact, you know, like ladybirds have poisonous knees, right? They do, by the way. You know, you're thinking, well, whoa, you know, that kind of thing is incredibly engaging for a person to sort of know and not know at the same time. I guess that sort of liminality, if you like, is very good. It's very engaging for a person. You know, it's where they think about your subject area, and that is where the engagement comes in this transition between knowing and not knowing. So. And not everybody likes this for a variety of reasons. It might be because of the fact that you are worried about being misquoted. You're worried about actually you are shy for going in front of the media and so on. But you're going to have to engage with the media, and it's one of the ways that we can generate this sort of impact outside institutions that's nice and measurable, is by actually engaging with things like the media. And indeed you see this happening all the time. You know, you imagine how much that coverage is worth to some of the research groups at the moment, you know, like the groups in Oxford that are, you know, are working on things like the vaccines that we're hearing about in the news all the time. You know, that is creating measurable change, you know, for their research, and indeed that's going to be able to contribute somewhere, you know. So it's a necessary evil, and again, it's a discussion for a slightly different time here and a slightly different session, I guess, of how we would engage with the media. But one word of advice is that if you are going to engage with the media and you want to engage with the media, not only can you work with the comms team at your institution, right, and there's going to be people in there who can help you and hold your hand through the process. As indeed I've experienced when I've gone on live TV one early morning on the Victoria Derbyshire show. You know, my comms team helped me absolutely no end, and I had a fantastic experience. But if you're working with especially things like the print media, what they want, and it's a way to get to broadcast media, of course, they want a story. They want a pre-formatted story. All right, and actually, you know, I'm not here to talk about journalism, but you know, you've got to imagine a journalist is on a very tight turnaround. They don't want to have to do a lot of legwork. So the more information, the more sort of pre-formatted sort of story you can give them, the better it will be picked up. And I promise you, it will happen. And of course, that stops you being misquoted in many ways, because it does happen. But there are ways to manage that, again, which is for another time. So I'd just like to leave you with a few top tips in the last sort of part of our session together, excuse me. And so let's have a few top tips. And these are my top tips. Again, this is my opinion only. And this comes from my experience over the last many years of doing this lark. And so my first top tips is expect the unexpected. Now then, we've just had that, because technology is your enemy. And as we've seen, because I've just been kicked out of Microsoft Teams in the middle of a presentation to loads and loads of people. And so if you're there, if you are going to do some outreach and you are going to say, you know, a distributed part of your institute, or you're going into a public space or so on. And actually, one of the things I do in my science outreach is talk about the historical perspectives of science sometimes, particularly with regards to scientific ethics. You know, that's still really valid. You know, people are still engaging, you're doing a talk and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's a one-way piece of communication, but you're still providing a function in outreach. But, you know, always, we've been to conferences, always expect the unexpected, you know, belts and braces for anything, you know, always take your own PC, always take everything on a memory stick and so on. You know, those basic sort of considerations are vital. And if you are developing an outreach, let's call it an intervention, an activity, you need to keep it simple. The simpler it can be, the better it will work, and the more engaging it will be, genuinely. And I can give some examples towards the end. So just always expect the unexpected. That's the first thing. Now then, one of the things that we've been doing, particularly to engage public at a distance through our community engagement programme in the STEM response team and in the Faculty of Science and Engineering, is by particularly using video and sort of online sort of teaching through video. And it's a great way. It's highly impactful, it's inclusive and all of that sort of stuff. It's reusable, people like it, it's socially appropriate. You know, everybody watches YouTube to be able to do a thing these days. And, you know, it is absolutely perfect for what we need. If we are using sort of a distance learning sort of approach now, you know, to be able to do teaching, then actually, you know, we need to be able to do some of that to engage the public. And why not be able to do this to do outreach for our particular research areas? And certainly you can do that, but you need to have a little bit of a think first. In that, you need to think, if you're going to make a video, right? And actually, you know, I was up till 1:30 last night editing a video that's going out tomorrow. You know, you've got to think about a number of things that I have listed here. You got to think about who it's for. You got to think about what it's for. Okay, what are the points? You know, I hate to talk about learning outcomes, but outreach has those. You know, what actually is it for? You need to think about how it's going to be distributed to. You know, what are you going to put it on? Have you got an institutional virtual learning environment? We're very lucky at Wolverhampton to have Canvas, which is just dead easy to use. All right, it's absolutely a piece of cake. And, you know, we have something called Panopto, which is our lecture capture and live streaming piece of software that plugs into Canvas, allows us to actually distribute the things we do to the whole world, right? Not only synchronously, but asynchronously. So that's fab. So we have that functionality, but you might not. So we need to rely on things like YouTube and things like that. Now, so we need to have that sort of consideration. We need to think about, have we got all the right stuff, you know? And the right stuff are this, you know, really, these are all the supporting technology that you need. Some of my best videos I use, it's particularly for my students, are done in like VGA on my phone with a retort stand that I pinched from the chemistry lab to hold it. And they are some of my most watched demonstrations. And indeed, they are absolutely fab because students want, and certainly people want things right at their fingertips. So if you're doing a video that's like 20 minutes long, right, you've overrun by about 18 minutes because people want quick, right? And if you can get some concepts into really much less than 15 minutes, you are winning. But do you need to do a video like this? Right, you're watching me now, right? But do you need props? Do you need artifacts? Do you need images that are part of your subject area? What do you need? You need to think, you know, you really need to plan this. You know, what's the content going to be? What activities are we going to put in there? You know, we need to think about the technology. You know, I'm standing in a studio, really, right? But I've got proper lights, which is why I'm boiling. And you know, but it helps actually to give you as a viewer a better experience, I'd like to think. How can we make, if we're going to make a video, how can we make it more inclusive? That's what we've always got to focus on, is the inclusivity, right? And actually, I am talking to you on Microsoft Teams now, and I am being recorded. And the automatic captioner on Teams is pretty fantastic, right? The one on YouTube, right, is pretty fantastic with some edits. You know, so actually there are ways of making subtitles. We can maybe put a transcript, you know. Yeah, there's ways and means of making video very inclusive indeed. And of course, because people watch it again and again and again, it means that if English isn't your first language, you know, helps you be able to understand that. You know, there's more time to understand, and so on. Or if you've got special educational needs, again, you've got more time to understand. And that's one of the powers of video particularly. Okay, so if you are going to make a video, you need to get yourself sorted. And it's quite nice. This is what the video I've just made is all about, actually. You need to think about where you're going to film. You need whether or not you're going to need backgrounds like this. If you're outside, you might need something shiny to help you be lit. You might need some standalone lighting like I've got in this room here. Okay, if you're going to just do something from your desk and talk about your research, you can get ring lights or box lights and so on that can sit in front of you, and they are absolutely awesome and very cheap too. What are you going to film on? You know, loads of people everybody's got a phone, and indeed my team that are out there, or some of my team that are out there, they are making some of the highest quality videos for outreach I have ever seen, and they are using their phones and third-party editing software that is like costs less than a tenner. So they are achieving something that is absolutely fantastic on the minimum of budget, and they are regularly getting just well over 20,000 hits a week. So that is just with a telephone and nothing much else apart from a tripod. So if they can do that, everybody can. So can you be heard? You'll notice that in the bottom of my picture here is a posh looking microphone, and actually most of this I printed on a 3D printer, and so I made a lot of it at home. And really, you know, what you need is to consider, if you're going to make video, you need to know if you're going to be heard or not. Right, my picture quality could be rubbish, but actually I need to be heard, and as you'll see later on, you need to be seen as well. Right, there's a really good reason for that. But being heard is to be understood. So you need to have good sound quality. So if you're going to use your phone, it's sometimes nice to get a microphone you just plug into the bottom. You also need to sort yourself in your story, right? I've actually put a shirt on today for the first time in ages because I'm working at home. But you need to have your appearance sorted. You need to have your story sorted, and actually you can make a little storyboard to help you remember what you're going to say if you're going to make a video. Video is very impactful, and I cannot stress enough how valuable I think that not just learning through video but engaging the public through video is. Not only is it easy for us to make, you know, and you don't really need, like I said, a lot of technology, and certainly you don't need a lot of confidence to go out and do it. Right, just need to have a tinker. And I don't even believe you need to be particularly technological savvy to be able to do some of the things that we've been doing, because some of the apps out there, you know, particularly if you've got an iPhone, are absolutely awesome for creating just these kinds of things. Okay, so the most important thing in any video, right, that you might make is you must absolutely appear in it, right? You must not ever do outreach online through video with just a PowerPoint presentation and not your face, right? It's vitally important, and you need to be in it, and there is a really good reason for that, right? You will not engage a person particularly just by talking at them, right? If you're like a disembodied voice, like they're being talked to by a ghost, right? You cannot do it. It doesn't work, and there is a really good reason. So I'm going to do a quick group exercise now. Right, and I want everybody to do exactly as I say. All right, exactly. Right, now you can be sitting down to do this, and some of you might have, and you can put this in the chat, right? You can own up to this. I want everybody to be honest at the end, please, if you don't mind. And so you need to do exactly what I say. All right. Now then, as I said, you'll be sitting down. Feel free to stand up if you like. All right. If you've been sitting down all day at the computer, then maybe you'll like to stretch your legs. But nevertheless, right, what I'd like you to do is just, right, it's just put your hand out like this. Okay. Now, you know, square your shoulders. All right. If you're standing up, feet shoulder width apart. Okay. You can see that. I want you to put your hands out in front of you and bend your fingers towards the floor. Right, that's nice and easy. It feels quite nice to have a little stretch there. All right, I'm like that Joe, what's his name, who's doing PE, but like an outreach version, right? Joe Wicks, yeah. And anyway, I wish, right? So what I want you to do is just bend your fingers down like so, right? And then I want you to turn your hand over with your fingers still pointing upwards. So now they should be pointing at the ceiling. Nice, right? So I hope everybody's there. Then what I want you to do is just make an OK sign with your thumb and forefinger like so. Okay, so we've got that, hopefully. So everybody's sitting there. I hope you're all playing along at home. All right, then all I want you to do is do exactly as I say. So after 3, okay, 1, 2, 3, I want you to just put your circle on your chin. Now then, in the chat, I won't be able to see afterwards, how many people put the circle they made with their hand on their cheek? You can just reply by saying yes. Right? Some of you won't have. What you've done is done that, because that's what I've told you to do. But you've seen what I've done and just copied, even though you've heard what I've said. And some of you will have gone like this, but gone anyway. Right, because there is a very, very good reason. The majority of communication, which is part of outreach, of course, you're not communicating. We talked about public engagement through communication. I've used science communication as an example, right? Actually, the most, I believe, certainly, that most communication is non-verbal. And there's something called the Mohabian study, and that was done a while ago now, and that he came up with this 7-38-55% rule, in that 55% communication was done with body language, right? How engaging you are comes a lot from your poise, okay, and the way that you are owning a space. It could be your voice and your tone. If we hear a storyteller, they're not just effusive with regards to their body language, it is their voice. You know, their tonal inflections change, their speed changes, they leave a pause, and that helps you understand. It helps you be engaged and so on. All right. So this is why we need to be seen in outreach, particularly. All right. If we're going to go to digital platforms, if we're going to start engaging with people about our research online, which we should be doing, then actually the most powerful way is by being seen. That's why talks at a conference are dead good. Right then. I'm just going to share a little tip here, and I'll crack through this, and because I don't want to run out of time too much. And it's something we've got, and it's called, and it's a bit of a maxim that I run my life on, and it's called PV legs. Okay. Now, if you've done any communication training or any business training, you might have seen this acronym before. And if you are going to do any piece of outreach at all, whether it's a talk at a conference, because everything's outreach, by the way. If you're going to do a talk at a conference, if you are going to do an activity in a school, if you are going to go out into a community centre and hold a fora, then actually this acronym is going to save your beans, because it means this thing. What we've got to do is think about our poise, how we are, and our presence. All right, how we are in front of a person, as we've seen, affects how our communication works. We've also got to think about our pitch. All right, if I'm talking to the public, I need to know about them a little bit, and I'll come back to that in a minute, because I need to make sure that the language I'm using is appropriate for my audience. And that's what pitch is. So anybody who's out there is a teaching focused academic who's watching, or indeed if you are a postgraduate researcher and you are involved in any teaching, you will know when you're losing an audience that you're speaking to, all right? When they like, you know, everybody's looking around and so on, right? Pitch will help you hold that audience. Your voice is important. Not only does it have to be loud enough, again, you need to have emotion in that voice too. All right, you need to be engaging. The worst speakers in the worst conferences are those monotone people. All right, you don't want somebody who's too much, right? Especially you don't want to have one of them walking around speakers, right? But actually, you know, you can bring an audience on your journey by just using techniques in your voice. We also need some life, right? You know, you need to show people that you're human when you're doing outreach. All right, that's all part of being engaging. All right, and actually a lot of that comes through your eyes. It comes through eye contact. Now, don't be disturbing. Like if you're doing a talk as part of a piece of outreach, you don't just lock your eyes on one person and then stare at them. Right, if you're on the front row at a conference, it is your worst nightmare if that happens to you. But we need to have eye contact, and indeed we need to have eye contact with the room. If we are communicating to people, what we need to do is look up and feel proud, right, with a straight neck, right? And the reason for that is not only will it help our voice not get tired when we're speaking, it will also increase the volume of our delivery. If I'm looking down at a laptop, immediately my voice will go down, all right? I project into a space, all right? So if you are doing that, you know, eye contact with the audience is very important, even if it's just at an interactive sort of stand or something like that for a society you might be part of that you're using to generate impact for your research. Of course, I'm using a lot of gestures. You know, I like to be very effusive with my with the way I use my arms and so on, and it actually dictates what kind of learner you are to a certain extent. But I think to be able to be animated in the way you are, if you just stand there with your hands in your pockets, you don't look like you're bothered, right? And people don't like that. Right, people like to see somebody who's enthusiastic. But also, we need to think about the speed of our delivery. All right, that is again vitally important. In that, you know, if I'm going too fast, then you're not going to be able to keep up. Right, but if I'm doing delivery or I'm talking about my subject area as a piece of outreach, then actually, if I can use the power of the pause, particularly to be able to let something sink in, then what we can do is create engagement automatically. And, you know, so I can appear excited by speeding up my delivery and so on. And actually, if you are doing things like poetry readings, particularly if there's lots of rhetoric in there, you know, rhetorical statements and so on, like you get in Shakespeare, then actually you need to leave these pauses to let people understand. Right? But people don't like silence, right? Particularly speakers. They feel like they need to, especially early career researchers, feel like they need to fill up space. I was like that once upon a time. And actually, why not let everybody think? Have a break, right? Just for a couple of seconds. Have a little drink of water, all right? Wet your whistle and then carry on, right? And actually, that'll really help. It'll let everybody think about what you're saying instead of you just bombarding them. So that's PV legs. And if you don't take anything away from today, that is a really useful little rule. Okay, one thing you've always got to do is be accurate and precise. All right, people will suss you out if you're trying to blag them, right? So always accurate and always precise. Okay, but it's got to be simple to understand. Right? Don't forget, if you're engaging the community in outreach, you need to, of course, you need to engage outside your institute, don't you, to create impact and so on from your research. But right, you can't talk to them often like you're talking to a colleague at work, right? You've got to be simple to understand, right? And this person here was I think he's probably quite highly regarded as being fairly clever, right? And he said, if you can't, of course, Albert Einstein, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And one of the things that we hide behind is terminology, you know, and that comes from every subject area, all right? And to listen to, you know, highly regarded researchers in the biological sciences, for instance, talk to each other, right? It boggles my mind, right? If I sit next to two English professors, right, and listen to them talking, right, the things they say, I don't even understand what they're saying a lot of the time, right? So I'm a scientist, I've got different scientific language, but the people you might engage with to create the impact from your work might not have none of that language. So keep it simple. So you need to know your audience. Now then, you need to use familiar examples that are targeted to the audience in which you are you're engaging, if you like, in outreach. And the reason for that is because if you use familiar objects, right, and again you know your audience, then you know where to start. I guess in teaching and learning speak, they call it scaffolding, in that we have got something to build learning onto, right? And outreach is no different. We are building opinion. We are building knowledge. You know, we're using this it's a sort of socially constructive approach, I suppose. And actually, what we need to do, we need to know where people are first, because it's not like Minecraft outreach. You can't just build in the air, right? You know, things don't really float. So what we've got to do is build upwards from our existing foundation, but we need to know where people are first. So you need to know your audience. That is vitally important. You also need to think about the audience you are engaging, right? And I believe in the fact that the power of the local voice is very, very, very important. If I go into an area of the Black Country, I sound like I'm from there, okay? And but if I went to an area that was outside, particularly in the south, perhaps, right, people might assume that I don't know what I'm talking about, all right? And if I did the same, right, and I brought somebody who might speak with a slightly different accent, let's call it posher, right, and they came into the Black Country, similarly, they wouldn't be listened to because of pre-existing sort of social sort of, you know, opinions about the fact of how that person is based on the way they speak. So communication isn't just the content, it's the way we say things, as we said before. So the local voice is incredibly powerful to be able to get into somebody's head. So it's just something else to consider. And again, it's my opinion, really. Also, you need to tell your story. Pinch some tricks from storytellers. You know, think about narrative. You know, think about what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. You know, in devices within stories and tales, you'll see something like this. This is a story arc, and you can actually see we've got this beginning, middle, and end of a story. And actually, your delivery here, you know, should, if you're doing particularly a session in front of an audience as part of a piece of outreach, should have all of these things. It should have this exposition where actually you're setting the scene. You know, you're saying what I'm going to say. This is what I'm going to do. Right? We'll have this rise in action where we'll get somewhere. Right? We've got some excitement going on. Right, we're gonna get somewhere, but finally, you know, there might be almost a bit of a tragedy, right? If you're doing a piece of outreach, you need to bring your audience down somewhere, right? You need to give them this roller coaster ride, and it's a technique we use particularly in science outreach and theatre, where we might use we might have lots of laughs, and then we might have a little bit of a tragedy in the end, right? And that's to bring people back down again, right? So we can come up towards the resolution where we have a happy ending, and everybody goes home feeling happy, right? And actually, it's how we're excited. It's how, I mean, if you think about Cinderella, it works exactly the same way, right? Everybody knows that story. They're engaged, right? So why can't our stories be engaging using the same techniques of a storyteller? This is what great stories all are, okay? They are emotive, particularly, and that's one thing that I really like to hold on to. You must be super organised and keep safe. I'm talking to people who are particularly involved in the STEM subject areas. Remember, you're going to need risk assessments and all of that sort of stuff if you're going to do any kind of outreach, right? And anybody that goes into a space, particularly with children, needs a DBS, current DBS certificate, and sometimes you even need your and this is even for a researcher going anywhere, really. If you engage in the public, particularly at a festival, like New Scientist Live or the Big Bang or something like that, you need your institute's public liability insurance certificate, or at least a copy of that sending to the organisers, and it's always like that, okay? So you need to keep organised and keep safe, and actually if you're very organised, then you never forget anything, and it will stop you being so nervous. Okay, so learn the ropes is a very good thing, right? If you know somebody who's very good at outreach, talk to them, right? Learn from them. Take some of those techniques and think about how you can apply it to your own subject area. And that's what I've done. Take every opportunity to learn from inspirational people, particularly if you're early in your career as a research. These are some people that have been key to getting me where I've been, where I am now. So we've got on the far left there, you've got a guy. His name's Stephen Gates. He's called the Gastronaut, and he is a broadcaster and science communicator. And I've worked with him over a number of years, and the way he works has been incredibly inspirational. The person in the middle, that's Marty Jobson, and again, science communicator. He's the resident science communicator on the One Show, and the way again he works and the way he thinks has been incredibly inspirational to me. And because he's done a lot of broadcast work, it's quite nice to know how that sort of world works, particularly if you're going to generate impact from what you do. You need a way in, and people like this sometimes are. Excuse me. Final person there is an excellent friend of mine. His name's John Wood, and he is an outreach professional that works at the University of Birmingham. And I have learned more from this man than anybody else put together, not only about how to deliver, how to be engaging, but again, how to put sessions together, you know, how to be in front of an audience, you know, the technology that's needed, you know, to be able to do something like this, you know, has come from the sort of experience that I've learned from people like John. So learn the ropes. One of the places where I've had a lot of my development is at the Arena Theatre in Wolverhampton. If you have got a theatre, right, at your institute, go and find it, right, and learn anything you can about this presence, the presence of a theatre. You know, sometimes if you're interested in outreach and you want to do exciting things, the way that theatre practice works is incredibly engaging to people, and some of the techniques, particularly for dealing with nerves, are dead relevant for public speaking, particularly. So this is Neil Redding, who heads up the Arena Theatre, and again, I'll thank him for everything him and his team have taught me over the years to get to where I've got to now. One of the things you need to do, and I see that I'm going to come up to time soon, is use something called hooks. These are emotive experiences. These are funny stories, anything that people might recognise or, you know, that will remember, right? Emotions is one of them. If you can get into somebody through their emotions, again, you are winning, you know. And actually, if I said to everybody, what insurance company is this? Oh, yes, you would all say Churchill. Right, for the most part, all right, out there, because we know it's a hook, right? Hooks are used in advertising particularly, but you need to build them into your outreach, all right? So these are just simple ways to help people understand and remember and create the change that you need to make outside your institutes. This is Untitled Chapter, and he's from University College London. He's a cognitive neuroscience researcher, and he said this: one experience that you have that affects you emotionally is more powerful than hearing something 100 times. So if you can create an emotive experience of any kind, be that happiness, sadness, disgust, then you will get into the hearts and minds of your audience. Emotions are the best way in because we're very emotional creatures. One thing I will say is start strong and finish big. Right, that's vitally important, right, in any talk. All right, we've talked about that story arc with our exposition and things like that. If you're not engaging from the beginning, and actually, in my experience, you've got probably less than 10 seconds, all right, no more than a minute to get your audience on the same page as you. If you can't do it, you've lost them. It's very difficult to bring them back. You haven't got long. The clock is ticking the minute you go up in front of a group, particularly. So start strong, finish big, all right? Think about what you're going to say. Think about where you're going to get to in the end. What's the payoff for your audience? And simply, just go for it. You know, we might not have the confidence. You know, it's easy just to turn around and go, "Ah, oh, I'm going to do it." Just go for it. You know, if you haven't engaged in outreach, find some and do some, because there's no way to get better at a thing unless you experience a thing. So just go for it. And as it says here, right, even if it's bad, and I've been involved in it, not disastrous, but so it doesn't always work the way you think. Even if it comes out bad, in inverted commas, it's still an experience, and it all builds on where you can go to later. And the thing what it does build is your confidence in outreach as a researcher. So if you do want to know anything about public engagement or outreach, you are quite welcome to contact myself and my team. We are the STEM response team. If you Google STEM response team, we are top of the page, and you will find our contact details there, and we are happy to advise people in anything they are doing, and because we are experts in what we do, I would like to think. And if we don't know, we can certainly put you onto a set of resources or a sort of organisation that can help you. So the STEM response team, then, just to give them a bit of a plug, they're our team of graduate interns. These people are graduate interns that have been trained in all of those things, in communication skills. They can design curricula, they can design evaluations, they're curriculum aware at all key stages. All right, so all the way from A level down to nursery, right? They are aware of those things and build activities to actually fit into those curriculums, because we get more impact that way. But they're also aware of pedagogy and teaching practice, which I think is vitally important. So I finished there, and I did have until past, and so I've got about 5 minutes left there. I'll finish my screen share. Thank you for everybody listening today. It's been really good to be able to do this session today and talk about the kind of work that I've done, and how I've got to do kind of so much outreach. But it's been really nice to share some of my experience with everybody who's watching out there today. So I hope really that you found some of that useful. You know, as researchers, it's not always easy to get involved in outreach, but there will be people in your institutes, in your faculties and so on, if you are watching today, that will be engaged in it, and there is a need for people to do it for a variety of reasons, as you've seen today. So again, thank you for listening. Thank you.
All right, Martin, I've got a list of questions for you that have been collected over the session. Could I just ask everybody to turn their videos off except for Martin, please, because we are recording. So, Martin, first question from Daisy and from Tavashni is about your studio setup, your mic setup, and your lighting setup. Both. So they wanted to know a little bit more about that and where that's come from. In particular, Tavashni is a student vlogger.
Okay, so I will. Shall I give you a quick tour? Shall I do that? I'll have to take my camera off the top, and so I've got, as I said, microphone wise, right, I've just got a USB P&P condensing microphone, super cheap, right? You can buy them. It's got to be a condenser though, and you can buy them just very cheaply off somewhere like Amazon. Just plugs into your computer. If you're going to record sound and things like that, one of the things I use, which is a freely downloadable program, right, and you can get it on Windows 10, right, it's called Audacity, right, and it produces very, very high quality sound recordings particularly. So I've got a pop filter here, you can see that on my video, right, that's just to stop me spitting on my microphone and doing that. And so I've got my microphone in a suspension mount here, and that's just to take out a little bit of the vibrations that takes down the sound quality. I've just got the microphone on a very simple mic stand boom. And again, these are super cheap. I think this is about 15 quid, the mic stand. The camera that you're watching me on now is a Logitech C920 camera. It's a HD 1028p high definition self-focusing webcam, right, which allows me to mess about a little bit. And one thing I have got here, I've got lots of USB devices plugged in. So my top tip, right, if you're going to set up a little studio like this, is that you need a powered USB bus. Don't just plug it into your computer, right? So I've got loads of USB plugs that are plugged into the mains, basically, right? And that stops me using up all the power on your USBs, because you can only plug a few things in at once, really. Okay, so I got 3 light boxes, and should I just take this off? I don't know whether that'll help. Right, so you can see, I don't know whether you can see that, I've got this. So I've got these light boxes as well, and I'm quite blessed with these, and they were a little bit pricey. So I'm not going to say how much they were, but they're worth more money, put it this way, right? And so it gives me, you can see me still, gives me a source of flat light. So it allows me to light a space. And if you're going to use a green screen as well, you need these sorts of things to take shadows out of backgrounds. And so they're actually around £100, right? But that's for all the lights, all the bulbs, and everything. And they're like neon bulbs, they're like energy efficient bulbs. So they're going to last forever anyway. But you've got to have good lighting. It's really important. So yeah, and it actually came with, not with the university backdrop. They all come together. The lights, you get like lighting kits on Amazon, and again for around £100, and it's worth spending the money because they last forever. So this is a big rack, and on there is a white background, a green background, and a black background, and it depends what you're filming. And that's my setup, really. Fits in the back of a car. I've got a big toolbox full of bits, like mic stand, adapting things, and all sorts of stuff. And but I think the most important thing I've got here, not just, you can use a well-lit room, of course, but are the lights and the microphone, and the availability of a HD camera, actually. So you can, this setup was really cheap, but you could spend thousands and thousands of pounds. There you go.
Thank you. We've got a couple of questions that relate to presentations. So Mina was asking about how do you monitor yourself as you speak, for instance? Do you have a mirror in front of you? Dora was asking about how you maintain visual presence and eye contact, particularly when you're working virtually. How do you know that everybody's engaged and also follow your presentation? And Manpreet was asking how you get over nerves while you're talking.
That's a really good question. So I'll start from the back end there. So nerves is a bit of a one, right? So yeah, there are 2 things that you should do, right? 1, never get drunk, right? Never drink before a presentation, right? It's very important, right? Because it makes you more nervous, right? So what you do before you get on stage, right, shake it all out if you like, right, try and get all the bad out. And if I'm about to go onto a really big show, maybe over 1,000 people, right, I get very nervous. Or if I do live interviews on radio or TV. And the thing to do is to make sure you got some water. So you've got to have a bottle of water because you'll get dry mouth, right? So have a little sips. But the most important thing is something called diaphragmatic breathing, right? And that's when you breathe from your stomach. So yeah, big deep breaths where you fill not just your chest, but I know you can't breathe through your stomach, right? But really filling yourself up and letting that out really slowly, right? And that sort of in and out breathing, it really does, clinically proven, if you like, to reduce not only your blood pressure, but your pulse rate, consequently. So it will make you feel less nervous, right? But also preparation, will prevent you feeling nervous as well. If you know what you're going to say, I don't recommend taking notes onto stage at all. But if you know what you're going to say, then and you practice a lot, then you won't feel as nervous. There was a question about eye contact, weren't there?
Yeah.
And the way I'm doing that is just by pretending that there's somebody in front of me. And so I don't know what you want to imagine in front of you. I know I'm talking to a camera that's just got one eye like a robot. And but but I'm just imagining there's people out there, you know, there's people. I'm just imagining like I would talk to a conference, you know, and if I am in a meeting with lots of people, you know, eventually we're going to be able to go to conferences and sit next to people again, I hope. Then actually what I recommend is not just looking at one person, right? And a lot of people say scan because you want to look at as many people as you can, but you're not looking at them really, right? You don't. I am giving the impression of giving them eye contact, right? But by locking eyes with someone, right, you challenge them, right? And I don't believe that's a good thing when you're speaking. So what I do is I just gently scan about here, right? So I don't actually lock their eyes. I'm sort of looking in the middle of their forehead, but from a distance it looks like you're looking at them, right? So it means that I can give the impression of giving eye contact when I'm not. And that's sometimes, you know, so I'm gently scanning like this. I mean, one thing I never recommend is walk up and down unless you're doing comedy. But, you know, by gently sort of just scanning around the audience and seeing I'm looking at people's expressions, not necessarily their eyes. Then that's going to give you the image of being engaging with people in eye contact, even if you don't like it. What was the first question, Deborah?
That was from Mina about whether you monitor yourself, your presence. Do you have a mirror or something like that?
Yeah, so if I'm practicing, I used to practice in front of a mirror, right? And but I tend to, if I'm going to do a big piece of public engagement, I'll sort of know what I'm going to say, but I won't actually rehearse quite so much now unless it's for something very, very special. But yes, I will practice in front of a mirror. During my delivery, right, I've got like a little sort of side brain, if you like, that's listening to what I'm saying. So I'm monitoring for things like my tics. So I know I say so a lot. I go so, right, and that's one of my pauses. All right, I'm listening to the erms. You know, I'm trying to take those out as I'm editing as I'm going. Right, I'm trying to notice what I'm doing and what I'm saying. I'm trying to notice my mannerisms because they're very distracting for people. So, you know, if you're touching your nose all the time, you know, or like I know somebody who went on stage once with his trousers fly open, and now when he's stressed on stage, all he does is play with the zip on his jeans, you know. So to be able to sort of nail out get rid of those mannerisms, right, something you can sort of do on the fly with enough practice, but you've got to be very self-aware, and it comes from seeing yourself present a lot. So one of the things I would recommend that is if you are practicing a talk, you film yourself on your phone, right, and then you watch the video back, however painful that seems. That's a good tip.
One last question was from Cynthia, who was asking whether you can build outreach and public engagement into your methodology.
Right. Okay. So I believe that, of course, you should be able to, and because some of the practices behind public engagement and outreach, there's no reason why they can't be part of an experimental study, be it in teaching and learning, in the humanities, you know, whatever. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to. And if you want more information about actually that kind of thing, if you look at the NCCPE website, they've got loads of toolkits, particularly about how to do public engagement and outreach, how to combine it in studies, how to evaluate it properly, and so on. But of course, it depends. It depends what your study is. So if you're trying to change, if you're looking at, and I'm very interested in personal change, in psychological change in people, if through outreach and public engagement. So if you are looking at like cognitive development, cognitive change, if you like, in a person after an event through an intervention, then why not build that in using a toolkit like that label provides? So yes, I believe you can.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
There are a few more questions popping up, but we are running over. So what I'm going to invite you to do, Martin, is to perhaps hang around just a little while and perhaps answer Oh, Ben's vanished for 2 minutes, so you can answer some more of the questions. Ben's our next speaker.
Yeah, sorry, Ben. Sorry, I ran out. I apologise.
There are a couple of more questions from Tavashni, but Jane's asked a question where she said she's preparing video for staff for a staff conference, so she feels that this is both timely and useful.
Excellent.
There's a couple of more comments that are saying thank you. That's been a really useful session. Tavashni's question was about whether you have a front-facing camera.
Yes. So with regard looking a front-facing camera as in regards to looking out to an audience when I'm doing a session, is that what she means? Or looking at me?
Okay, maybe you could have a chat with that whilst Ben's presenting, okay. So you can pick that up in the chat.
Yeah, no worries.
That's brilliant. Okay, so thank you ever so much, Martin. We've got loads of lovely comments that you might want to look back on after, and I'm going to ask you to turn off your webcam and invite Ben to take over. So thank you very much. So Ben, if you could turn your webcam on. I'd like to introduce Dr. Ben Halligan, who's the director of the Doctoral College, who's going to be talking to you about how to heighten your profile as a research profile as a researcher. Okay, thank you. Are you okay to upload your own slides?
Oh, could you do it for me, Deborah? Do you have them?
I do, but it will mean that I can't do any technical monitoring.
Right. Let me just sort that out.
Okay. It might sort out the problem as well with it's a little bit too bright behind you as well, so people can't see you.
Okay.
So if you open up your slides onto your desktop, and then the hover if you hover over your picture, you'll be able to see a hanging bar, and there's a square with an arrow in, and that uploads your slides.
Okay. Sorry, if I hover over my picture.
Yeah, a hanging bar will appear.
No, I can't see it.
Okay. Do you want to start talking? And
I have a share option.
Yeah, that's it. Please share.
Is that...
that's it.
Can you see them?
Yes, we can now. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, hello. We can hear you.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Sorry, I'm just sorry, I can't see the slides myself. There we go. Deborah, are the slides visible?
Yes, we can see the slides.
Jolly good.
Okay.
Okay, so I can't see the chat box, but I obviously can hear you. So if anybody has any questions or wants to interject, then just please shout, if that's okay. But at the same time, as part of
I can monitor the chat box. So if you want to pop your questions into the chat, I can then raise those to Ben.
Okay, so have we got two ways of doing it? One is via the chat, and the other is just people speaking. Okay, and then if I have a couple of also exercises that I'd like to do as well, which I think we can probably best manage through chat as well. So we'll have a go and see what happens. I'm just wondering, are many of the people here, were they also at Martin's session just now? I assume so. So what I'll do is I'll perhaps...
most of the people were at Martin's session.
Okay, so because otherwise it's going to turn into quite a long afternoon. So I think what I'll do is I'll try and put a bit of a sort of break to go and conduct one of the exercises sooner rather than later, if you need to just take your eyes off the computer screen for a bit and stretch your legs. So what I'm talking about today are ways to heighten your research profile. And this is something that I'm quite evangelical about. And I'm sure that, like me, you've had that experience of looking at a university's website and trying to work out what it is that they're actually doing, what they've got, who they've got, what's going on there. And part of the problem is that you're wading through pages and pages of vague mission statements, things that don't really mean anything, or you're looking at courses that don't list the staff who are involved. And what you actually want to look at, I guess, is the research. What's really going on? Who have they got? What are they doing? It's very difficult to find that. Almost any university trying to find the actual research culture is really quite difficult, because university websites often are geared towards potential applicants, but at the same time they function in ways that are almost more complicated than any other website. It's a shop front for the university, but it's also a kind of point of information for the staff, and it's also an archive of regulations. All these things are sort of going on, so they're difficult to navigate. But then when you do break through that and you're actually looking, as I think a good potential PhD applicant would do, at the staff, the people, it can be terribly frustrating, because you can find that there's very little information on the profile page, the home pages of various staff members. And in fact, it can kind of be worse than little information. It can be sending out all the wrong kind of messages. Many years ago in Wolverhampton, I audited all of the research profile pages for all the staff. And of course, I found some fantastic stuff, some really wonderful stuff. But at the same time, I found some horrendous stuff. Literally pages that hadn't been updated in a decade. And would signal this by saying stuff like, you know, exciting developments for 2006 include, or to be published in 2007. I was looking in about 2015, 2016. So if you combine that with a lack of a photograph and a general dearth of information, you really have one message to potential applicants. And that message is just, you know, go away. Like, no one's in, the shop's closed, we're not interested. Since then, around REF and around impact, there's a great need to have a bit of a shop front for the research that's going on. Also around REF, and I think a greater mobility of staff, there's a great need as well to show what it is that you do, what you've got, your profile. I used to make this joke, and this is before I was at Wolverhampton, that you could get suspicious of your colleagues in terms of they're looking for another job when they started sorting out their online profile. When things were updated and a new photo was inserted and additional information about what a great lecturer they are turns up, you kind of know something is going on. So when the push comes to shove, when the crunch comes, people then understand that what we're talking about is a kind of live CV of what they've got, of who they are. Well, ideally, that would be contributing to a general sense of the research culture within the university. And I think Deborah and I have this kind of contradiction, which is, on the one hand, as far as our postgraduates are concerned, there's a very good research culture indeed, and we're very highly rated in the Postgraduate Research Experience Survey. And, you know, the wonderful week we're in with all the events that are going on, and listening to people like Martin and Daisy and Evie really show the abundance of what we give our postgraduates and how appreciative they are. But that message isn't necessarily being achieved externally. And I guess that's my starting point. And I want, therefore, to talk today about how to construct a research profile in various ways. And this is really, I think, of particular interest to not only postgraduates, but also early career researchers. But then I'd like to say as well, more senior researchers, because when I audited the website, I discovered that early career researchers tended to be quite good at this. So people at lecturer levels, but then also senior lecturer levels, usually were fairly complete. It was more senior professorial levels where things were not complete or were, very badly out of date. I mean, other things that I thought were quite depressing were things like spelling mistakes, or sort of bizarre contradictions where at one point you'd call yourself Mr. or Miss or Mrs. and then at another point you'd be doctor or even associate professor and then professor. So even the kind of title is a bit confusing. So the key questions that I really want to deal with in this session. Firstly, what is a research profile? What use is it? Why heighten it? To heighten it. Well, I've kind of answered a lot of the first bit already. I mean, typically what we mean is a website that can be on the university pages or off them, that is about yourself and your research. And this shouldn't necessarily just be a list of here are the publications, but it should be a little bit wider, I think. For someone like myself, what I like people to do is to talk about their PhD and MPhil students and their professional doctorate students, past and present and future. So currently I'm supervising in the areas of da-da-da-da, and here are some titles. It's possible that you wouldn't give the names of the students you're supervising unless they've given permission.
Can I just interrupt slightly, but your slides aren't moving, so could you go to the top of the screen and to the second icon along, and that will make the slides full page. And then you'll be, as you click through, those will then show up.
Is that working, Deborah?
Not yet, no. Second icon along.
Yeah, I've done that, but is that working?
No.
No.
Right. You might want to try going to the bottom of the page and going and trying it from there then, please.
Sorry, say it again, bottom of the page and...
Bottom of the page. If you go to the bottom right-hand side of the page, there are some very small icons. And somebody is saying F5 might work as well.
F5, is that? Can you see them?
No.
No, oh gosh.
I think you've just got to make sure that actually that you double click onto the slides at the side so that they do show full show on that you're moving them.
I'm not sure what else I can do to achieve that.
So what we're seeing is key questions at the moment. So when you move down to the next one, if you could just test this for me, please. Move down to your next slide. Okay, that's them now moving. That's fine. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Let's do it like that. Okay. Thanks, Deborah. So, what is the research profile? And I was saying that for myself, it should be a little bit wider than just listing publications. So it would be something like, for PhD students, those that you're currently supervising in terms of their projects, but their names if they give you permission. Those that you've previously supervised as well in terms of the projects and the names, and I think most usefully what these people have gone on to do. If you've supervised a couple of people to completion, maybe they're now working in industry, maybe they're working in other universities. That's a very powerful thing to have on your research profile. And I think that when people are looking for possible supervisors as PhD research, for a PhD project they're considering, they can kind of see a career pathway in that. You know, here's someone who's delivered the full package. In addition, I guess future supervision. So you'd often have a formulation which would be something like, I would be keen to accept, you know, people doing PhD research in the following areas and that kind of thing. Sometimes on the profiles to quite name academics, I see the very opposite, which is that something like, I currently have no more space available for PhD students. And I assume these people are bombarded with requests and are absolutely at their limit of the number of people they can supervise. So you would have a variety of things in terms of the research profile, but it's the about me, it's who you are. A bit later on in this session, I'm going to come back to the particular elements of it, of what we can have on that research profile. I find sometimes academics are very reluctant to do this, but in almost any industry, someone of comparable seniority, it really would be de rigueur that they would have the standard profile on the page of whatever company they're working for. So it's really something that I think is important for any academic in any university, and especially in terms of thinking about that person, trying to get beneath the skin of the website and actually find out about the research that's going on. What use is the research profile? Well, it's useful in terms of, I guess, recruitment movements. So I've talked about the way in which this can attract potential PhD students. And if you think about a certain difference, to me it's quite clear that the undergraduate might think about at this particular university because they have a good reputation in a particular disciplinary area, or it might be they like that part of the country, or it's near their granny, or it's near their home so they can live there, or it might be that the university's reputation itself is particularly good. So there are a variety of, let's say, more universal considerations in terms of what an undergraduate's looking for in a website. The master's student, to me, seems a lot more looking for a certain disciplinary area. So they would typically want to have a master's in a certain specific subject. And the question of who's delivering that can be somewhat secondary. With the PhD student, therefore, we've gone to the other end of the extreme. And I think that in a way, they may not actually care that much about which particular university they're at, especially in that so many universities are giving the ability of blended learning, of online supervision and so forth. It may be that they're a bit savvy and they've heard various horror stories about bigger, prestigious universities who haven't really given the kind of hands-on support that you would find at other universities. So it may be that a big name puts them off somewhat. But really what they're looking for is the correct team, the correct supervisors, the correct research expertise, because these are the people that they're going to be living with for, academically at least, for a number of years to come. So they're looking automatically for the research profile. And therefore, it really is a powerful recruitment advice for pulling those PhD students in. I made a joke as well, saying that it was also a way of detecting people who are keen to leave the university and sort of move on. And I suppose, you know, realistically, that's true as well. I mean, if you're looking for another job, you need to sort out your online presence. The very typical way in which interviews occur at universities will be around a short list of people who are invited in to give a presentation. And sometimes a few days before that presentation, the names of those people will be released to staff members, potential future partners, work colleagues, who will be invited to come along to the presentation. And at that point, there's an awful lot of Googling that goes on, and people start looking for online for information about who these 5 people are, especially if there's some sort of management dynamic. Especially if this is going to be a new head of department, this is the person you're going to be working under. Of course, you start looking. So there's a vast difference at that point between someone who has a very good research profile and online presence and is enthused about their research and what they're doing, as a member of all kinds of scholarly societies, seems to have given papers all over the place, they're committed to their research, they're kind of approachable, they're savvy with technology, things like that on the one hand, and on the other hand, somebody that you can't find any information about whatsoever. Somebody who really seems to be a sort of hidden operator. And I think, therefore, in terms of a research profile as a kind of live augmentation of a CV, this really is very important if you're looking for these kind of things. And it's true not only if looking to move perhaps to different institutions, or maybe if you finish your PhD looking for a first job and so on, but it's also true in terms of movement within an institution, in terms of promotion matters and things like that. So why heighten it? I guess we need to therefore think about improving it, not only updating it, because I've mentioned already that often these things are terribly out of date, but also capitalize on new technology that we have, new things that we can do on research profiles. So here in Wolverhampton, just really in the last couple of months, we've been talking about the ability to upload videos to a research profile. And I think to me, this really means an awful lot. Very slowly, universities, some years behind the curve, have kind of crept through elements of online presence and social media. So a few years ago, perhaps you could link your Twitter account to your profile and that would show that there is some evidence of life going on. But now you can upload a video, and I think we've heard already around the matter of videos and communication and things like that. But it's a bit of a showreel in the same way that someone who's looking to work as an actor or a model would have a showreel of who they are, what they sound like, things like that. So when Daisy was talking about pitching ideas to non-HEI people in terms of promoting research and impact and outreach, if you have a couple of minutes of a video where you're talking quite clearly about your particular interests or your research project or something you've just published or some research externally funded ongoing network, then that really makes a huge difference. It makes you approachable, it makes you visible, and this is something you can practice. You're blue in the face, you can film it yourself, you can get the lighting correct, you can get the wording correct and all those kind of things. So we're in a situation of constantly being able to heighten it and improve it and push it forward and things like that. So okay, the question then is, I guess, how we go about heightening it. And this is where it becomes a bit more complicated. So I've just moved to the next slide, which is your online presence. And Deborah, give me a shout if you can't see it. So I've listed here, I guess, the chief platforms that we are talking about. And I guess there's a split between those that are the official university platforms and those that you would expect to have a presence on, and those that are kind of unofficial, that are off your own bat. The University of Wolverhampton's policy is that official research group stuff needs to be on the official Wolverhampton website. For an individual, I think it's slightly looser. And I think a lot of academics, myself included, would have an official university homepage, and then they would also have other bits and pieces that speak to their particular research profile that would probably be around a blog. So let's quickly shoot through these in order. I've mentioned Twitter already, and this has really been something that universities have talked about a lot in recent years. The understanding is obviously applicants, especially undergraduate applicants, are often looking on Twitter for evidence of a research culture and a social culture and events and happenings that go on that they want to be a part of, and who's linked to that, and news and so forth. So you'll often have a discipline or a department of something or other will have their own Twitter feed, and indeed, journals and various institutes and so on will also have their own Twitter feeds, but also academics would sort out a particular Twitter feed. There was an article in The Guardian a couple of years ago that represented something of the kickback from some quarters of academia around this, and maybe fair enough. And the argument was, I'm an academic, I'm a researcher, I'm not some sort of social media influencer. But, fair enough, I can see both sides of that particular platform. One of the problems with Twitter is that it can become a sort of unholy mix of the personal and the professional. And that's why you'll often have at the top of Twitter something like, these are my views, these are not the views of my institution, or I'm writing in a personal capacity, or some sort of rubric along those lines. So you can have an interesting mixture of high-level comment on academic matters, papers at conferences, archival research, experiments, and complaints about some restaurant that's messed you around, or some hotel that's lost your booking, and things like that. Okay, maybe that's fun. Maybe that's not so good. I think that's down to the individual to do it. What I do say to new PhD students is one of the first things that very usefully they can do is to set up a Twitter account, and it's free and it takes 5-10 minutes. And even if you never contribute anything, even if you never complain about a restaurant or a hotel or comment on a keynote at some conference, you can link in to departments, to other people, to the correct journals, to events, and you can create for yourself in next to no time a very contemporary feed of all kinds of information that's going on that will inform your research, will keep it contemporary, will keep it up to date, will make you aware of all the current debates. Twitter then is really essential. And, I think many of us can think back 20 years or so, and, the situation for PhD students at that point was very different. There was a fear that they'd be stuck in a library, they'd be slightly losing the will to live. I remember the graffiti in the loos of the old British Library just off the Charing Cross Road, and the incredible graffiti of depressed academics who were spending their lives kind of in isolation from each other, could only really come together at conferences. And all that really has gone. International connections can be made, and indeed those connections then become all kinds of exciting things, like the basis for international collaborations to strengthen research bids and so on like that. Around Facebook as well, I think it's very easy to start groups on Facebook. And if there's a particular interest that could be a collection of researchers in a certain area, they could easily get together on Facebook to disseminate information in the same way. Or you could set up a kind of professional Facebook page also to disseminate information about your research and what you're up to. I would say 4 or 5 years ago, that was the way to go, but a lot of that seems to have migrated to Twitter. I mean, the use of Facebook is that it's easier to archive stuff and find older stuff. In Twitter, it's kind of there for a couple of minutes and then it sort of vanishes. But obviously these two things can be connected across as well. So as you can imagine, all kinds of societies will have a Facebook page as well. And it's a good way of reaching out. And it's a good way of presenting yourself and your research. This is particularly true, Twitter and Facebook, where you've had something that's been published. So the common error for academics, and I'm as guilty as anybody, is that when your article is finally published, you think that's the end of the journey. The achievement's been made, you've been given the gold medal, the race has been won, you never need to think about it again. It would just be on your CV and that's it. And in fact, the general tenor of the way academia is going is that in a way, this is only the beginning. Once something has been published and is available, that's when you begin to promote it. And typically that would involve maybe speaking at conferences about it, maybe taking copies, but also Twitter and Facebook. And every time something relevant occurs, to then dumped this information. I wrote a thing about that. It's available here, maybe on the university's archive if it's not open access, to kind of keep it going and to keep it relevant. I remember a colleague of mine that I want to talk about a little bit in a while in terms of an exemplar of how to do this, would even go one further. So he would use his homepage to do a quick journalistic version of an academic article that he'd written in relation to things going on in the news. So he would signal to the article, he would do like a 3-paragraph summary, he would kind of link that through social media so that journalists who were looking for comment and those kind of things would know this was the person they would need to go to. He wouldn't send a journalist a 7, 8, 9,000 word article and say, check this out because I've written about it, because obviously that would not be looked at. So there can be all kinds of opportunities to do the things that Daisy was talking about in terms of talking to the right people to disseminate one's research if you're minded to do that. A couple more platforms here, Instagram and Flickr. I mean, these are around images, curation of images. It may be that you're researching in an area where there's not much to look at. Or it may be that you're researching in an area where there's endless stuff to look at. Documents, archives, experiments going on, you know, all kinds of things like that. These can be filmed or photographed, and those images can be put on these particular accounts. But as Martin was saying, we all have access rather immediately to quite sophisticated technology and how very easy it is to film this kind of stuff. And I mentioned already the ability to put a video on one's homepage. So at the point of running the big experiment, at the point of looking at some archival material, it's very, very easy indeed to have a little film about this and then to include it on the website and to show what it is that you've been up to, what's going on and things like that. So one of the uses of Instagram and Flickr, therefore, is that I think it begins to archive images that you may not necessarily even understand the use of at the moment. And what I mean by that is that I think whenever you're doing some sort of research-related activity, it's good to take a shot, because that image could wind up in the future in some sort of conference presentation around the subject that you've been researching. It could wind up even to supplement an article in a publication because the image is yours. You could lend it to friends. You're not having to deal with this endless hassle of copyright clearance of who you've got to pay 200 quid to use some image, you know, or it's 400 quid if the book is more than 500 copies. I mean, all this trouble. And a quick photograph can do an awful lot of good. It can also be, although I don't want to talk about this now, an enhancement to one's methodology in terms of research, in terms of, you know, recalling, for example, the situation in which you interviewed somebody, where they were, what they were wearing, you know, stuff like that. That information can reveal itself as being quite useful further down the line. But it can also, in a way, open up, especially ethnographically, further areas of research. I don't know if you're talking about public sports, you know, a quick photograph of crowds outside the stadium can actually be terribly revealing a year or two down the line in terms of demographics and ages and ethnicities and things like that. So one of my frustrations with people who don't do this, especially people who are PhD researchers, is that they're being hit with endless opportunities. And I think we have to learn from teenagers and tweens who won't do anything, won't make a meal without taking a photograph of it. And I think we really need to learn from them and begin to sort of use it to document what it is we're doing. This documentation doesn't have to be public. It can be set to private. It can be your own particular archive of things that have been going on. But at the same time, it can showcase the excitement of the research. To me, this is a very important element of demystification. For people who've not been to university or their families haven't been to university, there's often a lot of confusion as to what exactly goes on in universities. And, you know, as academics, people, even one's parents, are fairly unsure what it is you're actually getting up to all day. They know you're not a teacher, but there seems to be elements of that. But what you're actually doing is quite mysterious. And I think demystifying this is a very important thing in terms of engagement with the public, in terms of impact, and in terms of approachability, and in terms of communicating the research, and in terms of promoting the understanding of the civic public role of the university. It's often said that, you know, when you look at various documentaries, there are just, you know, too many celebrity chefs talking about Brexit or whatever, and there's quite a dearth of academics who are contributing to these particular debates. And I think part of it is because they're not gobby enough, they're not promoting themselves enough. The feel of their research, of what they do, of how they shape the materials that they encounter, is somewhat lacking. It's in the ivory tower, it's behind closed doors, it might turn up in a journal. There could be restricted access, and therein is the problem. The general drift of REF is to acknowledge excellence in research outputs, but also to begin to pick up the trail of this around impact, and to begin to understand how this is functioning in other areas, of course, in impact case studies, but also in a general research environment way as well. So these all these free platforms really enable one to do this. And I think that the canny early career researcher, or someone finishing their PhD, or just having recently finished their PhD, has a natural youthful advantage here, because there's good motivation to do this around enhancing research presence and the benefits that can bring to you. And that motivation is not one that necessarily is shared by more senior academics who may not have heard of Flickr or Instagram or things like that. So I think that there's a space that one can rapidly fill. And there aren't many aspects of university culture where you can say that. You know, in terms of capturing external funding, it all seems to be covered by the big boys, often literally male academics. They seem to have mopped up all of this stuff. Well, you know what, here's something they're not doing. Here's an in. Here's a new thing that we can do. And I think that for me, a lot of this is a lesson from PhD students. We never sat down and decided that Twitter is something that we should tell our PhD students to do. It was always the reverse. You know, students would do it, and then you'd realize it, and then you would begin to see maybe the use of it. Okay, so I've talked a bit about those platforms. We have the actual university homepage, and then we have three listed here that are off university. One is academia.edu, one is ResearchGate, and one is LinkedIn. I'm sure there are others kicking around as well. The actual university homepage can be a bit stale and a bit stagnant. Many universities won't allow you the ability to update your homepage. So in next to no time, it goes out of date. But also it's to a template as well. And that template will fit you without nuance to all of the standards of every other page, and it all begins to look a bit homogenized and a bit samey. Endless pictures of academics against messy bookshelves. You know, the list of publications is not clear what's some minor thing and what's, you know, a major thing. If it's just saying book or article, that's the only indication that it's a book or article, which obviously there's quite a big difference between those two things. So you're kind of fitted into the template, and that's sort of it. And it will be around branding, and it will be around identity, and it won't be around freedom of expressing a bit about yourself in your particular area. So that will often be complemented by maybe a homepage that you own, which I'll come on to in a second. All universities now will have an electronic archive of pre-published versions of articles, because it's a requirement for REF. open access, but the requirement only extends to a few things at the moment. Articles, not books and chapters necessarily, not monographs, not necessarily other outputs. So many academics will use either academia.edu or ResearchGate and actually create their own archive of their own outputs, which may contain downloads of them. For sure, there are some problems around this. There are problems of legality in terms of what version of your output you're using and who actually owns that. Academia.edu is desperate to monetize what they're doing, and they can be slightly pesky in terms of perpetually asking you for money to kind of find out who's citing you or to set up a homepage for you, you know, stuff you can do for free. But they are quite massive and they have a nice discoverability to them. So you can tag your output via its subjects or its disciplinary engagements, and then you can find anybody else who's talking about the same kind of thing that you're talking about. And also, once academia detects that you're doing that, it will start sending you very useful alerts about a new thing has been published in your area, or you looked at this and you downloaded this article and here's another article that's in this area as well. And academia.edu, unlike University Archive of published outputs, will contain other interesting things. For example, people will put PowerPoints of their conference presentations up there. They'll put calls for papers. Occasionally they'll put teaching materials, lecture notes. So all of those things are also kicking around on academia.edu. It's a great archive of what you've got, of what you've done. I mean, on my one, I must have a decade's worth of, or maybe more, graduate programs. So I can look back 10, 12, 13 years to see who it was that was speaking on this subject, and you know, maybe we should get them back and stuff like that. And then also those people would tend to tag themselves in those programs as well. So it's pretty useful, academia.edu. People who work in social sciences, humanities, arts tend to use that. People who work in hard sciences tend to use ResearchGate, which pretty much works in a similar fashion. ResearchGate seem to rather sneakily set up pages for academics, even if they haven't set them up themselves. So they kind of generate robot pages sometimes. And then you have LinkedIn, and I'm never really sure why LinkedIn is always suggested in terms of training for staff, because it seems to be not particularly good for academics. I mean, you can write a bit of blurb about your skill set and your outputs, but it's not yielding it in the way that you would think other academics would want to look at it. I mean, LinkedIn initially was a way of scoping other positions that were available, and likewise, if you make a position available, if you're hiring, to fire that across LinkedIn as well. But you know, many academics have a LinkedIn page as well. So if you leave one institution and go to the next, you still have your academia.edu and your ResearchGate and your LinkedIn, whereas you probably won't have your actual university homepage. And consequently, you can carry these things with you. But that brings me to the notion of blogging and a particular homepage that is about you and is about your stuff. And I've mentioned here two platforms. One is WordPress and one is Wix, W-I-X. Wix is free and is apparently pretty good, but I've never used it, so I couldn't give you much more advice. WordPress is free in a limited capacity, or you can pay a bit for an enhanced capacity, but WordPress will allow you to create a URL for yourself. So you could use your name and just stick .com or .net or .org at the end of it, and that's your homepage. So all the other bits and pieces that you can put on these other sites, you can absolutely put on your WordPress homepage. And this is probably the homepage that people are going to hit when they're Googling academics in the field to find out who they are, in terms of asking for expert opinion, or in terms of, you know, someone who's giving a presentation, or, you know, anything like that. And likewise, you carry this with you from institute to institute. and you have control over it, and it's a lot more lively. So that, for example, it's not unusual to find a WordPress academic homepage where they will write a blog entry about some conference they've been to. They might include a couple of photos of the conference. I've noted that taking photos of particularly good PowerPoint slides is quite popular. And then once they've done that and they've uploaded it, they may link it through Twitter, they may link it through the Facebook group, they may dump further images from Instagram onto it. So in fact, it really is the platform. It really is everything about you. And I think it's the thing that you're able to exert control over and you're able to grow it. Setting up WordPress is really, really easy to do. I mean, it's a matter of minutes. We do some training sessions in the doctoral college where we talk about this. And when I've done it, I've taken postgraduate researchers through it, and we've set it up, and we've always chosen like an imaginary person, like a Wolverhampton plumber, and then we've set up his or her page, and it will be like plumbersinwolverhampton.com or whatever. And it's quite interesting how quickly it can be done. This, I think, if you're a postgraduate researcher, is really important as well, because although you can have an actual university homepage, and we really welcome that, and we offer training around how to do that, to have your own page is something that allows you to showcase your research to the world. And thinking about that figure 20 years ago, stuck in the library researching, wondering who else is out there, they didn't have that at all. So it's a wonderful opportunity to do all of these things. Okay, yes, Deborah.
From John.
Yeah, let's have it.
So he's talking about social media and asking whether there's a risk that PR departments see social media as just another broadcast outlet rather than exploiting the facts. Social media can be interestingly risky, personal, informal, and subversive.
That's a very good question, and that's very true, and that's a line that one has to tread. I can think of problematic examples that speak exactly to that concern. There's a tension in the sector between, I guess, freedom of expression and saying things that might be a problem for your employer. I can think of various examples around that I'm not going to go into, but it's put universities in awkward positions. And it's put academics in positions that they probably don't want to be. I've mentioned already a kind of sense of mixing professional and personal, complaining about hotels, I'm talking about your research. But, you know, when talking to postgraduate researchers about blogs, we've looked at a couple of poor examples, and one that always springs to my mind is someone who'd put a blog together who'd done exactly what they should be doing. So they talked about their research and the conferences and things like that. And they'd also talked about their teaching. And that's another very important thing to put on the blog if you're thinking about an academic job or any job that requires that kind of communication. But they'd also talked about their frustration with various students that weren't named and their annoyance at the modules they were teaching on, and they talked about their medical situation and various things they were doing that involved no longer taking various prescribed medications. And obviously that's up to them. But I mean, I think if someone Googled this person who was looking for a job and they came across all of this, they would think this is rather alarming. Is this the kind of person that we should include on a research project we're putting together? So I think it can be a bit damaging. And for sure, you know, there is that tension as well, to answer your question too, which is between dissemination of work and just flogging yourself in a somewhat shameless fashion, which maybe somewhat demeans the elements of the research you're doing. And it's a bit tricky. And I think there's also a sort of difference between UK academics and American academics in this respect. American academics are a lot more forward about this. And I think in US universities, you have a greater culture of kind of acknowledgement, prize giving, so that people are able to say, I received the Anthony whatever prize for most promising this, that, or the other, and they kind of list all of this in their CV. There isn't so much of that in the UK. And US academics are a lot more forward in making those connections, and UK academics aren't. And, you know, Deborah will know as well that I've detected this social reticence in terms of Viva preparation, where some researchers are sometimes reluctant to blow their own trumpet and to say, look, I've done something no one else has done, or, you know what, there were challenges here that I overcame. And, you know, to get this data for this thesis was really difficult, but I did it. They don't say that. They just assume it's acknowledged when sometimes it isn't. So there can be some tension. And I mentioned as well that Guardian article about I'm an academic, I'm not a social media influencer. So, I mean, the other thing is what's called digital footprint as well, which is that if you say things that may come back and haunt you on social media, then that could be a problem as well, you know. And we all know every week there'll be some footballer or politician who is embarrassed by somebody digging out something horrendous they said 10 years ago on social media, maybe when they were a teenager. So you've got to be kind of careful about how people perceive you and what you get up to as well. So there's a lot of freedom, but there's a danger that you may take that freedom in a way that can be counterproductive, I would say. I hope that answers the question. I wanted to move now to an exercise, which is also, because I whittled on for a bit, the opportunity to give you a bit of a 10-minute break or so. I wanted people to go and Google a bit and to find an example of a good online profile, or to find an example of an online profile that could be improved. That's my polite way of saying a bad one. I think, could you not look at profiles from your own universities, if that's okay, because that could be seen to be a little bit negative. But let me think. Should we meet again at 25 to 5? And if you could maybe, if you come across just one good one or one bad one, or something that would be worth our looking at, could you bring the URL back to us, and then we'll take a look at some. And I'd be interested to hear your observations as well. I think that'd be a useful exercise. Is that okay, Deborah?
That's brilliant, thank you. There are a couple of questions in the chat that you might want to have a look at as well during the break.
Great, so let's reconvene in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. So I don't know, Ben, if you can see the chat, but there's a question from Antha who wants to know how much time would you say on average one needs to spend maintaining these platforms so that they can still be up to date. And Diane has asked a question. She says, whoops, I need to just open that out. I'm only in the first few months of my PhD. Is it important to get a profile and a platform set up early, or wait until you've got published research under your belt first?
Okay, let me have a think about those, and then I'll, if I may, I'll pick them up when we reconvene.
Okay.
About what time? Those are from about what time are those? From about 4:26, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Lovely. Okay, Deborah, so there we go. We'll take a quick break.
Okay.
Colleagues, I think we're back. Have we got you there, Deborah?
Yep, we're back. Oh dear, Sam got kicked off due to a thunderstorm. It's just about to start again, so welcome back. Daisy's given us a lovely example of a professional and a personal website. So
let's take a look. My gosh, this is great. So we're looking at somebody, Professor Sarah Peverley, Professor of English Literature at Liverpool University, a medievalist, cultural historian, broadcaster. Oh, so she's also a new generation thinker, Middle Ages expert. Isn't this beautifully laid out? And what an approachable, what do you think, Deborah? What an approachable photo as well.
Yes, I like the photograph. I like the layout as well. And I don't know if I've been said this a few times. I'm quite severely dyslexic, and actually I found that quite a nice layout to be able to access.
Very true. I mean, you absolutely don't have the sense of some fusty old professor with low social skills, but you know, someone you want to talk to about their research. So that really is very good indeed. I can't imagine that it's something that would get anything other than, you know, an awful lot of hits. So, and then also, Daisy, thanks for providing the personal website as well. That's got some of the same prose, but a lot of good screen grabs there of various things, including playing the harp, which is a bit of a dying instrument. Did you know that? And then a blog, and then theatre, events, publications. Gosh, there's an awful lot of good stuff. And then linking into various YouTube videos and hashtagging things so it becomes findable via Google. So that's all looking really good. Definitely very impressed with that. Yeah, and as you say, that's a very good website as well, Deborah. So Sam, is Sam back with us?
Sam's back with us. Fashion has also shared a website for Dr. Robert Kilroy. Again, he's head of English at the Sorbonne University in the United Arab Emirates.
Wow. Yeah, and this looks good as well. So, do you know, it seems to me that what you need is a lot of space in a website, you know, not just like compacted loads of information. But I guess the other thing is, and I think universities haven't quite managed to do this very well, is how these things look on phones, you know, because that's the mode of access primarily at the moment. And often things that look great on a laptop or a PC become quite mangled on a phone. So I think that's quite important as well to consider. Are there any other suggestions of good websites or not so good ones?
Rachel said she found one where the photograph looked like it was a bit mugshot-ish,
yeah.
But didn't want to share it because she felt it was mean.
Oh, fair. we can't shame people.
So what we can take from that is actually, you know, both of those have got really nice, approachable photographs, haven't they? So having one that looks like you stood in front of a firing squad isn't a very good idea.
But I think that, you know, I think that's part of the university branding is they'll bring in a photography media company. They'll line people up. They'll take a shot of them against a bare brick wall. So that's the mugshot, have you seen this man kind of thing. Or the other is they'll push them into the back of their office and take a shot against a bookshelf. And it reinforces a sense of academics as somehow toxic bachelors who live in some cocoon, really nothing to do with the outside world, you know. And Daisy's namesake, Conrad Black, obviously, you know, a disgraced fellow, but he would always have photographs taken from below of himself against skyscrapers. So it looked like he was this, you know, key figure in terms of the modern urban landscape. Okay, maybe there's something to be said about it. But I mean, the other thing is, I mean, like Rachel's, I detest having my photo taken, so having to do this honestly fills me with dread. I don't think anybody's that keen, but you can do it as a selfie. And I think that the beauty of having different websites is you can have a kind of non-official photograph that you can use. And indeed, most universities are quite happy for you to use a kind of funner photograph as well on the official homepage. Yeah, and today's filters can blur it a bit, as Tavashni quite correctly says. Very true. We've got a couple of questions to answer, but I wanted to look at some examples just to try somewhat to illustrate my particular point. I'm not sure if you can still see my screen, but I wanted to talk about a colleague of mine I've worked with called Professor George Mackay. So I've just added there his University of East Anglia profile page. So there's the URL if you want to take a look. But as you can see, it's fitting him very much into the standard university profile page, which to me looks a bit 2005. You know, you've got this kind of banner image. We're familiar with the 1967, 8, 9 UEA buildings, which you can see there, kind of slightly brutalist. And then you've got a kind of fairly dense section of overview text with all kinds of links. At the bottom, it notes his website, which I'm going to look at in a second, and his academia page and his ResearchGate page and his Twitter page as well. But you can see there's quite a bit of information. Then when we move to publications, what we get there is, and this is reflecting the system most universities use. I don't know if this is Elements or Pure or one of them, but it's just this list of things, and it's difficult to differentiate in terms of the notional quality of the output or what kind of output it is. There's a bit about his research, which is just the main themes, listing his books by titles, listing his keynotes. So it's just a list of dates in various countries and things like that. Okay, so you get the sense that even though that he's updated this is something of a stagnant web page, which is perhaps quite typical of, I think, pretty much every university. So let's look at his own website, which I think is on WordPress. So let me now give you the URL. So let's take a look at that. Can others see the website? I can't see it. Oh, Sam, if you actually go to the links that I provided, that's probably the easiest way of doing it. Yeah, so as Tavashni says, vibrant, but it could do with a better layout. So if you look at georgemackay.org, you've actually got here George taking over. So you have all kinds of headings at the top that he's detailed in terms of all his activities. So he actually will have, for example, under the media heading, all kinds of information about media engagements he's had. Under my books, he hasn't just got this kind of list of titles, but he's got images, he's got links to the website. He's got all kinds of information about illustrations, and it looks much more approachable. Interviews, over the years, I've interviewed people for my books and so on, and here's some information about if you want to read those interviews and things like that. So you've actually got a kind of opening up of his profile and who he is. And on the last page, you've got videos and you've got links to YouTube where he talks in a very, let's say, informal way. You can see he likes to talk from his garden shed. So you've got this amazing mess of plants and books. So you really get a sense of the person and what he's up to, as well as, contact and stuff like that. And he describes his work as cultural studies with a soundtrack. which I think is a wonderful tagline and kind of grabs you immediately. And it speaks very much to his particular interests around punk, around DIY, around subcultures and things like that. So so he's already mentioned as well that there's an academia.edu homepage, and there's a ResearchGate homepage, and George has the misfortune to share a name with a popular heartthrobby actor, so it may not necessarily with his name be immediately easy to locate him. Here's the Twitter account, and you can see as well, we've got the links back to his particular WordPress homepage. We've got quite a few things going on. He's promoting his work. Read my interview here, and here's a conference I'm speaking at, and things like that. So it's a really welcoming experience of his work, and it really is all about outreach and things like that. But maybe the most powerful element of this website, at least in my experience, is on his home page. There's a section called PhD students, and he's taken photographs where he can of bits and pieces around awards, graduation ceremonies, and he's linked to the archive, and he's of the theses, and he's put the dates on, and he talks about the current PhD students, and then he talks about previous PhD students and what they do, where they now work. And this really then represents a very powerful invite for people to get in touch with him. And every week he will receive emails. I'm thinking of a PhD in this area, would you be interested in supervising it? So to me, that really is, a fantastic exemplar of how to do it. And most of it is off his own bat. And this takes me back to the question that we had a bit earlier from, was it Vicky? Someone was asking how long we should spend setting one up. Oh yeah, Anchor, how much time would you say on average one needs to spend maintaining these platforms so that you can still be up to date? Anchor, not very long. I think establishing it is the first task, and then a very periodic update, once every few weeks or once a month is absolutely fine. But it will exponentially grow, and then within half a year or a year, there's suddenly quite a bit. And I think that with George's website, he's had it for at least a decade. You can see he's layered stuff in, so it's become this incredibly rich resource in and of itself. So beginning and occasionally updating it is the way to do it. And he's done that across a number of institutions that he's worked at. George is an AHRC research fellow on the Connected Communities project. And I think a lot of that is about impact and about reaching out to various people. His research has involved protests, festivals. So we're talking about making connections with people that wouldn't necessarily be in the orbit of academe. So this website verifies that and who he is as a researcher. This is a very important thing as well for PhD students, especially those who are going out to do field research. Sometimes there can be a matter of verification. So the website, particularly an official university website, confirms that you are who you say you are. So if you're looking to interview people, they might Google you and they might find out that that confirms it. So that's an important element as well. Let's look at these other questions. From Diane, I'm only in the first few months of my PhD. Is it important to get a profile and platform set up early, or wait until you've got published research under your belt first? I would dip in, I would dive in while you can. I think if you wait till you've got published research, these things can take a while, and there's plenty to be doing. In the meanwhile, I mean, often you'll see like someone will talk about, I was at a conference, there was a keynote, here's a photo, he said this, how interesting, here's an article from this keynote speaker, then it's thrown onto Twitter. That person might pick it up, might retweet it. Other people will go, oh, here's somebody, PhD researcher, working in this area, a bit like me, let me connect to them. So it can build traction in next to no time, so I wouldn't wait. Any other questions kicking around here? A few people sending their apology. Okay, so there we go. Right, we're due to end at 5, I think. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. So
okay, so for the last couple of minutes, let me move to my final slide, but that involves sharing the screen again. Can you see my slides at the moment, Deborah?
We can still see your slide, yes, Ben.
Oh, super. Okay. So we've done the exercise bit, and I wanted to talk just in a kind of more granular fashion about this about me element of the website, because this can be the heart of it, and what kind of things we expect to have on the about me. So here I've got a list of suggestions. And obviously I have a nice picture of Peter Wingard, who played Jason King. Maybe this photograph is also of the vintage of many esteemed professors in the UK nowadays, in terms of when their photographs are put on their websites. So we would have qualifications, but maybe a bit more than that. The MPhil was in this, the master's thesis was on that. It was being supervised by this person. I used these archives, a bit of color, not just, MSc awarded this year, this institution, a bit more stuff would be kind of interesting about that. Then more general research interests. So that's why I very much like phrases like cultural studies with a soundtrack, but an overarching description of where you're fitting in. You're a medievalist, you're a yeast geneticist, things like that. How would you tag yourself? There are plenty of people in universities that want to tag you. You're in this research group, you're in this unit of assessment in the ref, you fit into this particular area. Well, you know what, kick against that, because if you don't, things will never progress, things will never move on. The generic descriptors of areas need to reflect the people who are in them. We shouldn't be hammering people who are in them to generic descriptors. So I think open, wide-ranging research interest articulations are pretty interesting and a good way of doing things. Professional experience, because of course many people come with a lot of engagement with the private sector as well, and universities like to boast about that, strangely enough, because it can seem that you've got some industry acumen. So a bit of that can be quite good. Often it's, before completing my PhD, I worked in PR, I worked as a consultant for whatever. So a bit of that can also show that you're not some creature of the university that's never left the ivory tower, but you can kind of look beyond that. Then, of course, publications, and I think these can be wide-ranging. It can be standard peer-reviewed outputs, but also maybe blogs, journalism, vlogs, podcasts, expand it a bit, make it as fun as possible. Obviously, the frustration is if you're talking about something exciting, but people, especially non-academics, can't get hold of it, then that's not good. So I think, as George has done, to create the link to the download, it's really quite important as well. Getting in touch. So how can they get hold of you? Is this through an email address? Is this through Twitter? I think you have to be slightly careful here, because I do see profiles where they say my office hours are these hours. My phone number is this. My office location is here. You can pretty much advertise when you're not at home. If someone's thinking of, burglary or something like that. So I think that perhaps, one has to be careful of too much information about getting in touch. Society memberships. So if you're a member of various international society for the study of whatever, let's list all of that. That's also, I think, quite important, because again, it shows you're not an isolated researcher, but you have connections to these various groupings. Real world experience, and I think by that I kind of mean not professional experience, but the kind of things that you might have done that maybe are more around charity or hobbies or particular events. A bit of colour can be added. And I've also got hobbies and personal as well. You'll often find some comment at the end about what football team someone supports, or what mountain they like to hike, or something like that. There's often a bit of personal detail in there that can be a bit jokey as well. And then contact information, and then links as well. So links to academia, to ResearchGate, to Twitter, to Instagram, Facebook groups you're running, anything like that. So I wonder, is there anything I've missed out here that people could suggest might also usefully be included in the About Me? Any suggestions?
So we've got a comment that is it necessary to differentiate between current research and general research interests?
That might be useful. I mean, I think there's a kind of micro and macro element to that, which is that the general research interests can be, you know, addressing a certain field. I'm a medievalist. Suggests a wide range that fits into your particular interest area. But then current research can be a bit more micro. So I'm currently looking at archives that talk about, you know, sort of diets in Sweden in the 1200s or something like that, you know. So I think, yeah, there can be an interesting balance between the two. I mean, it's a good question. There's a wider tension in academe, which is encapsulated, I think, in that joke about academics know more and more about less and less. And I think one needs to kind of push against that to a certain extent, not just to be the absolute expert on some kind of minor thing, but to try and sort of be a bit more of a generalist. Terry Eagleton says the differences between the academic and the intellectual. And the academic is someone who ever further plows the same furrow ever deeper and deeper, whereas the intellectual is perhaps a bit more interdisciplinary, a bit more wide-ranging. So yeah, I think striking a balance between those things is often a good idea. Right, okay, we're pretty much at the end. I just wonder if there are any further questions or comments before we give you a quick trailer for the next event.
So Tavashni says, contact details, do you just make email available? What platforms within Caution besides email would you recommend?
Yeah, I would say one's email. I would caution against one's phone number, unless maybe it's an office phone number. But then people will relate office phone numbers to mobile phone numbers, and the next to no time you've got some undergraduate's mate calling you up to explain some essay question they're struggling with, you know. So I think you have to be a bit careful, because sometimes students don't respect the boundaries that other people do. And then I guess Twitter as well, but then I think you've got to be a bit careful about what's being indicated on that. Yeah, I just think a modicum of caution is quite useful there. I guess it depends what you're getting up to in your home life a bit, doesn't it? Thank you, Jane, for your comment. And yeah, we're really happy that you've joined us, and because we're very keen to get as many people in as possible.
Well, we're at 5 o'clock, Ben, so thank you very much for that really interesting session, and some tips and hints about how to raise your research profile. We do have a quiz night at 6 o'clock. Ben is our quiz master, so please do join us. I've just put the link in there. It doesn't matter if you haven't registered, but if you take the link and join us, we'd love to see you there. Great, Rachel. We are looking forward to seeing you.
And that's at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
And you're promising us prizes, Deborah?
I said that that we couldn't promise prizes, but we could promise a bit of fun. We can award titles, can't we? We can.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we appreciate that it's been a really long day. We had tried to kind of have sort of a 5 minutes break in between sessions, but we overran. So thank you, everybody, for your patience.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Deborah, for looking after us.
Okay. Look forward to seeing some of you later. Okay. Bye. I'll just pop the link in again. Thank you, everybody. Okay, I'm going to close this session, so thank you, everybody.